Rated M for mature.
And unless it wasn't already obvious, this ship is under strict quarantine.
You've always tried to protect me, my big sister, but this was meant to be. It's now my turn to protect you, if only so that things unfold the way they are meant to. We discovered quantum resonance anomalies that prove the one-electron theory.
These things are merely antibodies, cleaning up the mess, which is us.
My research is about exploiting loopholes in the flow of time, but the research means so much more. It could do so much more for all of us.
I'm opening all the doors I can for you. Go and say hi to your sister.
Aubrey, help!
Hi there, welcome to the Close to the Sun Steam celebration stream. We are moments away from boarding the Helios, which is good for me because I'm catching my death of a cold. The developers are inside where it's warm, so let's go in there and get the show started. We'll be right back.
Rated M for mature.
You've always tried to protect me, my big sister, but this was meant to be. It's now my turn to protect you, if only so that things unfold the way they are meant to. We discovered quantum resonance anomalies that prove the one-electron theory.
These things are merely antibodies, cleaning up the mess, which is us.
My research is about exploiting loopholes in the flow of time, but the research means so much more. It could do so much more for all of us.
I'm opening all the doors I can for you. Go and say hi to your sister.
Aubrey, help!
Oh, okay, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. First of all, hello there. My name is Gary. I work for Wide Productions. I'm the social community manager extraordinaire, though I am known by many, many other things, depending on who you ask. And today we're celebrating the launch of Close to the Sun over on Steam and a few other e-tailers, and we are very, very lucky in that we've managed to secure two of the very talented people behind the game from Storm and a Teacup developers. I've got Rob and Joel with me here, and we're basically going to be talking a little bit about the game. We're going to be answering a few questions that we received over the course of the weekend when we put the announcement out that we were going to be broadcasting from the Helios today, and obviously taking your questions live from the show floor as well. So before we get in, one by one, Joel, you want to go first, just because you're on the left side of the screen here. Do you want to introduce yourselves and kind of give everyone an idea of who you are, what you do, and, you know, that kind of bag?
All right. I'm Joel Hawkelax. I'm a game designer for Storm and a Teacup. I've been working in the studio since it began, essentially. So I've had the good fortune to see this company grow and expand over the years. And our latest project has been Close to the Sun. So I was the game designer on that project, as well as a few others in the past.
Awesome. And yourself, Rob?
Hi everybody. I'm Roberto. I'm the studio manager for Storm in a Teacup, and Unfortunately, I wasn't here since the very first days of Storming a Teacup, but I arrived for the very first days of Close to the Sun. So it was the first project I followed from the very beginning, and I'm actually pretty proud of it.
Awesome. Okay, so just before we go in, you may occasionally get a little buffer or two. This is mainly because the internet over in the UK is having a little bit of a hard time at the moment. Quarantine is basically a pretty heavy theme throughout Close to the Sun. It's pretty much the name of the game, one of the very first things that you see upon arriving at the Helios. And unfortunately, it's got quite a lot of real-life relevance at the moment as well. Myself, yourselves, and I'd imagine a lot of the viewers at home are kind of in somewhat of a lockdown, kind of staying safe, looking after yourselves, and doing the best that you can. That does, however, mean I am running off home internet for this show, so please do apologise in advance for any small buffering or hiccups that you get. It does happen very, very occasionally. But leading on to that then, running a game development studio via remote, how has that been for you guys over the course of all of this?
Well, who's gonna start? Well, I'll start.
You've taken the floor, Rob. You've taken the floor.
Okay. Well, we actually didn't expect to have such a situation, but I guess nobody in the world really was figuring out something like that. And at the very first time, it wasn't so easy because we are used to work all together, all in the same, not only building, but also in the same room. So to get used to say hello from a very far distance to each other every morning was a bit difficult. But then after a week, we get pretty used to it, and we managed to work as a team, even not being all together. I don't know if you, Joel, feel the same.
Yeah, I mean, it works. It's not optimal by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, in the office, as you can see, I'm in the office. You can see black monitors behind me, simply because I happen to live really nearby.
Sure.
But in the office, I am probably the one who is the least social. I put on my headphones, I listen to Spotify, and just dive into.
So you 100% just into your own world. You go in, you sit down at the desk, and that's it. You're just kind of away from everything.
Yeah, some days more so than other days. So one would think that quarantine would be a breeze. That would be no problem. But it's you definitely notice the lack of immediate feedback, that the teamwork that is built over simply having a coffee and discussing random gameplay or level or combat elements, however small or trivial they may be. Those small aspects are more tricky to maintain as you're doing remote work. So I miss that part of development, even though I was probably the least expected one to miss it.
Well, I mean, there's an awful lot, as you say there, there's an awful lot of, you don't quite realize how much gets done around the water cooler, right? There's so much. Even myself, I mean, I must admit, even though my job is very social within Wired, there is an awful lot of, okay, we've got to focus on this, these are what we've got lined up, you've got to plug yourself in, switch off, and just kind of plan everything out. But there is an awful lot to be said for being able to turn around at any given moment and kind of tap someone on the shoulder and go, by the way, just about this thing. And all of a sudden, when you're having to kind of chase people up or do emails or call people or, rely on them not having to put the kids to bed at night and not able to get a hold of them, it takes on a little bit of a more tricky perspective when it gets around to that. There's also, not to bang too hard on the whole pandemic drum, but I mean, it's pretty much unavoidable at the minute. It is everywhere. A lot of people have said that, they're finding it quite tricky at the moment to even be productive in these particular times, right? Like, similar to yourself, I very much did not expect to find it quite so difficult. You know, I live online. My job and my hobbies and everything is, you know, sit at the desk at home, broadcast, do this. My life hasn't changed all that much, but it's actually quite interesting how much just the general feel and the general impact of everything and everyone around you, you know, it can be hard to be productive because these are really interesting and uncertain times, like top to bottom. No one is operating as, oh, you're just working from home. You're working from home in the middle of something that is quite literally going to be a defining mark on this generation. Like, let's not make no bones about it. You know, your kids, your grandkids are going to read about this in history books going forward. You know, it's very much a strange time.
And it's pretty cool. Just in Close to the Sun, we have this theme of world cooperation or to some degree alienation. But during this quarantine that we're surviving at the moment, it's just pretty cool to see the world in general, everyone agreeing basically to try to limit public gatherings and suspend the spread of this one epidemic as much as possible. So it's encouraging to see, despite bickering and the usual global politics that happen left and right, you still have a general agreement. People are listening to science and not religion or any other source for wisdom. People are paying attention and obeying scientists, which is pretty neat.
That's it. Like at the end of the day, it's a very strange period, and you know, I think thankfully ourselves, you know, we all are in jobs where we're kind of able to function remotely. You know, even before all of this, it was something that we were all kind of expected to do. So, you know, we have kind of worked out in that way.
In order for us to mimic, you were mentioning being productive earlier, and in order for us to kind of mimic the office feeling, on Discord we have 2 meetings every day, and during the day we also have a radio station where we can go hang out, listen to music if we want to, or just chit chat.
So basically like a little chill room, like a little...
Yeah, and I mean, we're trying to, as much as we can, mimic the office sensation, even though we're not in the office. So
Gotcha.
There are hacks around it where you can try to get as close to it as possible, but there's really no substitute at the end of the day.
No, and you kind of find yourself almost mimicking that. You don't quite realize how much that social interaction was needed or that you relied upon, right? Like, we have quite similarly, you know, we'll once a week run like a you know, someone in the team will be nominated to put together a little pub quiz, and then everyone will jump on in the evening at the end of the work week and kind of just chill out and, you know, have a fun little quiz. But even during the morning meetings, you know, where we all get together, announce what occurred overnight, what we've got planned for that day, you know, you'll kind of find yourself lingering on a little bit in that meeting space, much longer than you normally would in that meeting in real life. You know how meetings are. You go in there, you say your piece, you listen to an awful lot, you try and make note of what you need, and you're just desperate to get out of there and get back to your desk and get on with it. But right now, as soon as these meetings are going, you know, that they're finishing up, and you knock 1 or 2 people up that you still need to talk to, and before you know it, you know, you're just carrying on with your work, but you're kind of just enjoying the fact that you're able to talk to each other, because you kind of miss it. It really isn't quite the same. But regardless, taking all of that into account, and once again, we do hope that everyone at home, even though it is quite a heavy pressure on everyone right now, we hope you are all doing as well as you can in the current situation. and maintaining all your social distancing, washing your hands 1,000,001 times per day, and that's... You're playing as many games as possible. Honestly, video games have become a little bit of an escapism right now for a lot of people. Seeing servers kind of bulging and developers left, right, and center kind of, spinning things up to incorporate the increased interest. It's been quite an interesting time, just in the industry as a whole, kind of seeing people that wouldn't necessarily be so inundated with gaming news and communities and culture actually kind of embracing it, which is kind of fantastic to see. Gaming's always had this weird kind of holdover from the early days when arcades and score chasing and games are for kids, and it's that little machine you throw at the children in the background in order to keep them quiet while you're doing your chores. There's been quite a big uptick on it kind of being more of an acceptable pastime, which is honestly something that I hope. The world's going to change in many ways post all of this. Some ways in better, some ways for worse, no doubt. Who knows what shape the Earth is going to be in when all is said and done with this situation, but I think the kind of global acceptance and kind of seeing people take up more hobbies. I'm seeing a lot of people creating like content creation, not even just related to games. People are learning languages and instruments. People are making videos. People are learning instruments. People are even stepping into hobbyist game development because it's, they've got the time to do it. I kind of hope that level of self-investment, as well as the kind of more acceptance of gaming, but I hope that persists when all is said and done. I would really like that to still be kind of the state of play, as it were. So,
Probably.
go ahead, bro. No, go ahead.
No, it was interesting your talk. So I was thinking about it, and probably the real change in our mental attitude is the conception of time, which is completely different because we lost a lot of all those moments that we spent going from one point to another. I mean, for example, in my everyday life, I gained a couple of hours, the hour to go to the office and the hour to get back. So it's 2 hours a day that I can spend in something else.
Yeah.
And it makes you, I don't know, in the first moment, probably you're a little shocked. So what can I do with all this time? But when you realize that that's the real plus of a bad situation like this, and you start developing yourself with things that you like. One thing that I can say as a studio manager is that actually having the chance to work during a period like this is a good thing for all the guys that work in Storm in a Teacup, because you can think about the idea of I'll stay at home, I'll watch movies, I'll read comics and books and so on, but after a while you get annoyed about that kind of stasis. And working on something makes you actually feel better, or at least this is what the guys told me. I hope they will.
Totally. 100%. So, moving on a little bit just from the lockdown situation again, it's something that, it's kind of hard not to talk about, especially given the themes of the game, but something that I'm sure everyone has seen and heard of 1,000,001 times over the past few weeks. Storm in a Teacup, again, you mentioned that you'd had a couple of projects beforehand, before you moved on to Close to the Sun. Did any of those kind of inform or inspire any of the decisions that kind of went in to making, like on a base level? Because when it comes to game development, a lot of people come straight to the fold with an idea for a game, they come up with an idea for a project, and over the course of it, it kind of shifts away from what it originally was into whatever the final form ends up being. And sometimes this can be from a sheer development perspective. Maybe there was something involved that kind of made you pivot in a certain direction. But coming from your past projects, when Close to the Sun was originally conceived, how close to a one-to-one in its current state? Like how close to that original state would you say? You're not meant to laugh at that. You're not meant to laugh at that.
Well, I mean, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy.
I like that. I really like that.
All of our strategies, all of our ideas for what this project would be had to be modified in one way or another. That said, it's still fairly close to what we set out. Looking back at some of our early documentation and so on, we had like a one-pager that summarized the project that didn't go into that much detail in terms of mechanics and player experience, but just captured the atmosphere over what we wanted to create. That rings really true still today. So in terms of what we set out to create artistically in that sense, we got fairly close. But there were hiccups along the way that forced us to change direction in terms of the mechanics and what the player would be able to do naturally. Some of our previous projects taught us a lot about how to pivot better when that happens. In our past projects, in those, we never really hit the mark exactly on. We always had to pivot. This time, not only did we pivot better than we had in the past, but we also had the time and the foresight to know that we're going to have to pivot. Now is the time. Yeah. So we bought ourselves a little bit more breathing room in that sense, which allowed Close to the Sun to become way more polished than any of our previous experiences. So while we didn't nail everything 100%, we never really thought that we would. We're still fairly content with the way that the project shaped out.
So it was a little bit more. It was a little bit more going in, knowing that kind of nothing was sacred in that regard, like not just being aware that nothing was sacred, but knowing that you had, based on your past instances of this, you had the ability to, like you say, pivot and smoothly move it to wherever it needed to actually be for whatever it was in that particular situation. Yeah. So, talking about the conception of the game, and again, we have, I just want to take one moment. I have noticed, I have a word in my ear that the folks at home won't be able to hear. That chat is either not enabled or functioning, so anyone watching that is burning to throw chat in, I do apologize. We do have top men, as the phrase goes, looking at that, please feel free to jump in a thread on the forums and dump any questions you have in there, and I'll get the fine folks at Wired to kind of hand them over to me as a go-between if need be, but hopefully that will be functioning shortly. Just wanted to get that before everyone thought that we were ignoring them. When it comes to the original conception, the idea of taking an alternate universe stance on what is basically something that occurred in real life, for me, is always one of the most enticing elements of any particular story in a game. While there's an awful lot to love about creating a whole new world and a whole new, set of characters and rules and stories, and some games do that very, very well. I'm sure we could all list off dozens upon dozens of games where they've just completely came up with everything on there. Taking inspiration from a real life set of characters or events and putting a kind of cool twist on them is always something that I really enjoy. If we look back to, and this is probably not going to be everyone's immediate pick, but it's something that I actually really quite enjoyed, the early PlayStation 3 360 era, where Resistance Fall of Man, one of the launch titles for the PS3, which was basically, what if the World War happened but with aliens? And it was like, a really, say what you want about everyone kind of touted things as Halo killers and whatnot back in the day. But seeing this kind of, here's a real world event in time, but seen through this kind of fantastical lens, I've always found really, really cool. There we go, extra piece. Lol, I thought I was just alone. I didn't know the chat was broken, no. I think that might be it popping in there. Hello there. Hello there, Extra. Thank you very much for jumping in. No, it might have been, maybe you are alone. If you're in there, give us a shout out. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. With regards to that, though, I really enjoy the whole thing of here's something you're familiar with, you've got kind of context for, but you're kind of seeing it through a completely different lens. Obviously, Close to the Sun focuses primarily on the kind of, as some would call it, depending on which side of a propaganda you believe, the mania of one Sir Tesla, who decides that he is far too smart for this universe, far too smart for everybody, and he's going to take his ball, he's going to build a big ship, and he's going to go home. And he's going to go fill it with all super smart people, and everything is going to be fantastic, and they'll invent stuff that changes the world, at a boilerplate level. There's a running sub-theme through the game between his feuding with Edison and the kind of back and forth and scientific espionage and kind of all of the weird scientific politics that actually kind of go about in that entire sphere. How long did it take for you folks to decide that this was going to be one of the core running things in Close to the Sun? Like when you came up with it, was Tesla number one? You're like, we need to make a game on Tesla. Like how, it's because it's such a fascinating.
Yeah,
it's a really strange decision, and I love it, and it's amazing, and it's super cool to see it. But it's not the trodden path that a lot of folks would go down. So how did you arrive at that?
Well, we didn't, is the short answer to that.
Oh, okay.
We started off just knowing that we wanted to create a horror experience on a isolated ship out at sea.
Right.
And we knew that we didn't want any modern technologies like cell phones and stuff like that would provide like a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
So we knew that we wanted to set it back in time. So we went back, looked at old ships, found some really cool designs, and we were basically stuck there for a couple of months until Nikola Tesla came to the rescue. It was one of these things that as soon as we had him as like a motor, like an engine, he just made the game self-reference itself into being. He was one of these characters that are so interesting. You can poke at him from any angle, from his scientific achievements, from his personal life, from his hygiene obsession. There's so many interesting aspects to him that it was a gold mine that we just had to grab.
When you put it like that, he very much does sound like one of those few personalities that is basically a real life video game protagonist. Like everything about him, like you say, from his achievements, from his personal life, his hygiene, his weird obsessions and personality. A lot of things, people are very rarely as interesting as films or TV shows or video games make them out to be. They're very rarely quite, they get flanderized quite a bit and kind of turned up to 11 in order to exaggerate a lot of their bigger kind of angles. But yeah, so Tesla was very much just a touch paper for it. Like the idea was you wanted to avoid the kind of, sorry, there's something horrific going on, but my phone has no bars conveniently. You wanted to avoid all of that, so that set the time period.
Exactly.
And stumbling upon, here's this absolutely fascinating character that existed in this time period that we've set on. Well, I guess that's where we're going to put our eggs. That's super fascinating. That's actually a real nice coincidence.
And about that, I guess it's really connected with something you were saying, the alternative reality. I mean, Tesla is such an interesting character also because history has not been kind with him. And having the chance to change it is something cool for not only video games, but any kind of narrative medium. And so, actually, as Joel said, he came to rescue and asking to somehow give him the right end, or at least not the end, the right story to talk about.
So you're almost kind of in your mind rewriting history in a way that kind of paints him in what you feel he deserves, almost.
Yeah, I mean, from his just professional business acumen, he was a magnificent scientist, but he wasn't particularly interested in business, which led to his mark on the world being more forgotten than what it should have been. So just the fact that he was very liberal with his patents and didn't really care as much as he probably should concerning the impact that his inventions would have on the world. He was very, as far as I've read, of course, interested in making the world better and doing so through his inventions. But so he wanted his inventions to have grand ramifications. But when it came to the business part of earning revenue on those inventions, that was something that didn't interest him. That was small-minded to some degree, which to some degree has unfortunately shaped our perception of him in history. Now we see a resurgence in how history views Tesla, and that is all well and good and well deserved.
So just taking 20 seconds here, Extrapiece in the chat has a couple of questions. We do have a Q&A section coming up, but I feel we can pull this one up here just because, why not? It's nice to shake it up a little bit. A question to the developers: what was their inspiration for the theatre scene? I love the aesthetics and the grandiose architecture. The fallen chimney exactly reminded them of the movie Titanic.
Yeah, I mean, there's no accident that our main character is called Rose, which is kind of like a sly
a little
Titanic.
bit of a throw up to the
But yeah, when it came to the theater scenes, our concept artists did amazing work. Our art director did some really good sketches, which allowed our artists to really make that theater as grand as we would have wanted Tesla's theater to be. Tesla was a very dapper dresser. He liked to show off when he could. And if he were to build a theater upon his grand Helios, this magnificent ship, then the theater would have to measure up to those kind of grand standards. So that took a lot of time for us to get right. A lot of marble and a lot of iterations. Then I think on the theater itself, on the stage, I think we have the fall of Rome as the play that is being played, or the end of empire, or something like that.
The fiddlers going down with the ship, as it were, the aftermath and the kind of...
Yeah, which is both like a callback to what is happening aboard the Helios, but it's also just an easy reference to Rome, our home city where we're developing the game. So in some of these cases, the references that we have put into the game have been worked in our favor, sometimes intentionally and sometimes just by happy accident. So we've had a lot of fun with that.
Sounds like it. It sounds like it. And moving a little further in that direction, XRP says, I think it'd be interesting to explore the defecation of Tesla on the Helios versus his introverted nature. Rose does make an observation early on that it's a little bit too narcissistic of him to have a museum just for himself. He imagines that the Tesla character didn't actually commission it within the game story itself. Would you say that's a correct reading on that? Like he didn't go out there and go, I'm amazing, here's my museum of me. Like, this was something that built up around him kind of outside of his introverted nature? Yeah,
I mean, we had in our alternate take on history, Tesla is a much better businessman, and he
doesn't sell all of his patents off. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Step one. But he creates this company called Wardenclyffe, and through this Wardenclyffe corporation, he manages to commission this massive ship that attracts scientists from all over the world. And as part of this introduction to the Helios, for the guests and for the new scientists that are coming aboard each year, they need to get a proper grand introduction to Tesla. So while it isn't necessarily Tesla himself who might have commissioned this museum, it is part of that introductory tour that all guests and diplomats and royalty would have to step through.
It was the marketing department of Wardenclyffe.
Yes, there was somebody sat there going, I need to earn my wage. Let's just build a big statue of Tesla. Let's just put pictures of him everywhere. Like totally, yeah, you look great, man. You look great, honestly. Where's my money? Like someone was earning his paycheck right there. We have a dog involvement. That's amazing. What's the dog's name? Zelda. Honestly, I was really hoping the dog was going to be called Tesla. There was a little part of it. You should have lied. She
was born too early, unfortunately.
Next time, next dog. And you can get another one and call it Edison, and then just, treat one a little better than the other one, and it'll be a whole thing. Or a cat. Edison would be a cat. 100%. A final run on this before we move on a little. Exo says it would be fabulous for Helios to ultimately redeem itself from the Titanic-like tragedy in the first game and allow reason and intelligence to be able to correct the hubris of the kind of corrupt egotism that kind of came from within the Helios. And I feel it's kind of a shame, right? I mean, that's ultimately, we don't want to talk too far into the game spoiler territory. But we are on the launch of a new platform here, and there's obviously people that may not have experienced the story or the game for themselves yet. But it's kind of one of the bigger, outside of the personal narrative of Rose and her missing sister, it's kind of a big drop in Tesla's kind of tragedy here, that this thing that, as you say, was meant for good. It was meant to be this bastion where he could go away from all of the kind of lunacy of how he saw, restricted policies and just focus purely on things that he thought would make the world a better place, which, to a certain extent, you can kind of see how that could go wrong. It only takes a slight change in what you think is correct before you're a madman. But for all intents and purposes, the Helios is a tragedy. What was meant to be this saving bastion of science and innovation and invention for the better of humanity as a whole basically became this egotistical breeding ground for rights and kind of who was responsible for what, and obviously the espionage with Edison angle, and even within the ranks of the people that were on the Helios, them all vying for personal attention and affirmation and validation on their works, and to an extent, it's actually kind of sad when you think about it. If you'd gone out there and created this, entire haven based on your reputation and through no real fault of your own, apart from maybe better vetting procedures, I don't know, maybe they needed a few more questions on that questionnaire before you got a boarding pass. You're not really in control of that. And yeah, I think that's quite an apt notice there, Extro.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted the Helios to be grand, and it was grand. In our alternate take on history, technology is many, many, many decades ahead of its time through the work of the Helios, through the work of this Wardenclyffe Corporation, and also in some part through the work of Edison, who tries to compete with Wardenclyffe. So that kind of arms race between Tesla and Edison accelerated the pace of technology quite a bit. So you're left with this almost East India-like company that reaches massive, massive wealth and power, not only financially, but politically as well, especially as the Helios is now attracting the best scientists from all over the world. So if Russia wants to hold on to their brilliant mathematicians, they can't now.
No. Well, why would they? Yeah, exactly. Like you're a scientist, are you going to sit there in Russia being underfunded and undercut, or are you going to go and run off on what is essentially the world's greatest saga holiday, and go and invent something insane with an unlimited budget surrounded by luminaries? Like it's a no-brainer, right?
Why? There you can really quite literally change the world, which they successfully did, up until the point where they went too far. Maybe some of those restrictions that nations had put in place weren't such a bad idea after all. Tesla knew that he would be pushing the boundaries when it came to science, so he couldn't have the Helios be on land, because if something goes wrong, then it will go really wrong.
Very, very wrong.
So at least he manages through foresight limit the destruction that takes place there. But it's kind of like two birds, one stone. He avoids regulations and he avoids messing up an entire continent potentially if some of those experiments go wrong. But maybe some questions are better left unasked in this particular case, at least.
Exactly, and I think Extra is pretty right on here, where they pull up and say, it's kind of that understanding that morals and ethics kind of have to come together. They have to come along with smart governance in that manner. Like good intention doesn't carry everything, and at the end of the day, a good intention does not guarantee a good outcome. And as you quite aptly put there, sometimes you need to kind of make sure that those guidelines are in place for that exact reason. Let's have a quick look at the rest of the chat in there. Give me 1 second, because we are going to take a very brief 3-minute break, and I think we should actually go pay a visit to that museum. What do you reckon? It's been a minute. It's been a little moment since I've seen it, and honestly, we've been on this little boat for far too long. This little boat is kind of getting a little bit cramped. I mean, you say that Tesla kind of spent money. He could have maybe put a little bit more padding on the seating, is all I'm saying. Got a good amount of cogs, plenty of impressive lights, not a lot of comfort. I mean, who am I to complain? I'm not going to question the genius of Tesla. Ladies and gentlemen...
Not all the small boat. After all, not all the boats that lead people to the Helios were the same.
This is
So
also true. This is also true. And we do have quite an interesting tale around the inclusion of these boats, I believe, don't we? And kind of the invention of them. We'll touch on that when we get back from a very brief break. Please go grab yourself something to eat, get a drink, make yourself comfortable, go stroke any animals that are nearby. Ask permission if they don't belong to you, and we'll be right back in a couple of moments. We're going to leave you with, again, I know we heard it before the stream began, but I do absolutely adore it, the Porcelain Pill single that was announced and released with the game. Give us about 3 moments, folks. We will be right back, and we will carry on our discussion of everything Tesla, talk a little bit more about the development of the game, and we're going to challenge these two to a quiz about how much they actually know about Nikola Tesla. Not that I know a lot about Nikola Tesla. I pulled it off the internet. It could be wrong. We'll find out together in about 5 or 10 minutes, okay? We will be right back.
Feel it in the air. There's something coming. The consequences are building. I don't want to be a sinking ember that all remember as a warning. What have you done? What's in the darkest water? I'm scared to death that I won't make it out of here alive. Did somebody say, I feel we're sinking deeper with more speed the more we strive? Is that what we get for playing too close to the sun? I feel a little scared. A storm is coming. The thunder's breaking upon us. I don't understand, but I feel the danger. The static and the sparks can hold. What have you done? What's in the darkest water? I'm scared to death that I won't make it out of here alive. Did somebody say, I feel we're sinking deeper with more speed the more we strive? Is that what we get for playing too close to the sun? We've been playing with fire, now it's all set ablaze. Oh, what have we done? Is that what we get for playing too close to the sun?
All right. right. That should be more or less break time done. If you give me 1 moment, I'm going to unmute our beautiful human beings here. Do we have the fantastic Rob on deck?
Here we are.
We do. We have the fantastic Rob on deck. We also have Joel back on the deck. You there, my friend?
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. Fantastic to see the pair of you. Thank you very much for returning. We now find ourselves needing to very quickly mute Skype because it is making notification noises. Apologies for those in the background. Stop Skype. Stop Skype. Right, there we go. First of all, thank you very much for waiting for us and for returning, Lord Extra Piece. We've got a Dr. Rizadna Klaus. Some Portuguese subtitles in the game, please. We'll hand that over. I'll take that and add that to the list of requests, of which there have been many. It's no secret that we have been given quite a laundry list of requests and questions, both in the Steam forums and just across social media in general. And direct them to me. Point them all at me. I filter through them all and make sure that everyone knows what they need to know. So thank you very much for your input on that, Doctor. I hope that you are looking after yourself. Like when you've cleaned up your little infestation problem, I'd like to apply for a room in the Helios. Well, okay. While we're on the subject of infestations, we are right back in one of the cleaner areas of the Helios, the fantastic Tesla Museum, surrounded by a wonderful statue of the man himself and some good old inventions laying around. Unfortunately, we've got a fixed camera here. I couldn't quite squeeze the budget out for a mobile camera crew, and I'm not going to get up, pick it up, and walk around the room, so this is what you've got. But speaking of infestations, you were talking to me a little bit earlier, Joel, about a small issue that you had during development. Which
Let's call it small.
let's call it small. Would you like to share it with us? Because
Sure.
I don't quite.
So on the topic of infestations, during the development of Close to the Sun, we knew that we wanted to have insects and cockroaches and these kind of creepy crawlers to be a noticeable feature aboard the Helios, especially as stuff has gone wrong and there may be bodies hiding and spread across the floor. So any type of kind of creepy insects just add that little extra touch of discomfort to scenes like that.
Yeah.
And while we were trying to find good models for our cockroaches aboard the Helios, it just so happened that our office got a cockroach infestation. They particularly liked the bathrooms. So for a period of a couple of weeks, we kept finding cockroaches trying to sneak in and out of the office. So we had to nuke the office with kind of nasty chemicals twice, and it still hasn't been enough. Now during lockdown, we leave the office closed for 2 months now, and we come back today only to find, of course they're back. There's really no good solution to get rid of them. We're out of options now. We're just gonna have to live with it.
You're just gonna have to move office. That's what it is. Or straight up,
Actually, we're doing it.
Yeah, we're building a new one.
Okay. Well, that's even better. Are the cockroaches coming with you, or are they just going to inherit the old office?
I hope that they will just settle in here. We surrender. They can have this one.
They can have the office. Just take off, nuke the site from orbit, alien style. Just 100 done.
Exactly. But fortunately, our artists got lots of really good references. So
there is that. I mean, the natural specimens to go in and take all of your reference material from. You normally got to pay extra for that. So in some ways you lucked out. Okay, so just before we carry on, we do have somewhat of a little community engagement competition that we're going to be running over the course of the stream. I believe our friend D3 has the link. He's going to be throwing it up in the chat any moment now. Can you do that for me, please? There we go. Awesome. So there's a tweet that just went out. What we would like, we've talked an awful lot, and this is going to kind of be the focus of this segment, is on kind of Tesla and his inventions and kind of how they were implemented in the game and kind of the comparison to their real life compatriots. We've got a handful of keys for the game line round, and what we would like to do is ask you, the wonderful audience, to jump underneath that tweet and give us a pitch. You're in an elevator with us right now. We're on the Helios. Tesla's brought you on board, and he looks at you and he goes, "What are you doing here? What are you here to invent?" What do you say to him? Give us your best on the spot pitch for something that Tesla would create. At the end of the show, we'll pull the tweets up, we'll have a look through, and the ones that we like the most, we'll throw some keys out for. So no time limit on that, apart from maybe 2 hours time or so when we wrap up. But feel free to jump on that and give us your best Tesla inventions, and we'll get some keys out to the folks after the show. Abby Gamer says, "What is this game? I got it for free, but never played." Well, you're in the right place to ask that question, because we have two of the fine developers, Rob and Joel, here with us, and they know a little bit about this game. They know a little bit. Do you want to quickly give Abby your Tesla elevator pitch for the video game? I've got my own. I've spewed it a lot, but I'd be quite interested to hear yours and see how it matches up.
Well,
no pressure.
No, not at all. It's something that actually we never did.
Oh, right.
Obviously joking.
No time like the present.
But for all of our viewers that don't really know what Close to the Sun is, it's actually a first-person horror adventure. Let's say more a thriller horror than a proper horror. And it takes place on this huge, this gigantic ship created by Nikola Tesla, called the Helios. The player acts as Rose, which is actually a journalist. She has nothing to do with science itself or with Nikola Tesla, but her sister Ada is one of the prominent scientists on board. And Ada sent a letter to Rose asking her to come quickly on board. She then accepted, since the tie with her sister is pretty important for her. And once she arrives on board, she noticed that nobody's looking for her, nobody's waiting for her. Actually, not even her sister is waiting for her. Something is definitely strange, and something seems to be definitely wrong. And that's pretty much how the game starts. So you will have to find out what's going on, where Ada is, and actually what you should do to survive.
Okay, I think that sums it up pretty well. Well, I think that covers pretty much every major beat on there. Top work. You have impressed me, and hopefully the rest of the people at Storm, who were like, "Oh, thank God he knew what he was talking about." Joel side-eyeing a little bit there.
What game is it?
But, Abby says, "I've already tweeted. Shall I post it here?" No, Abby, I can see. I've got one eye on the tweet. I can see yours in there. Fantastic. You're winning by default right now. You are winning by default right now, so congratulations on that account. I don't have a Twitter account. I'll tell people who haven't yet played the game to get a shot at having a key. Well, you know what, Extro, throw yours in here. If you don't have a Twitter account, I'm a benevolent and generous god. I'm 100% fine with taking a suggestion in here too. You deserve a shot as much as anybody else. Feel free.
You never know from where the good inventions can come.
Exactly. Oh, wow. Okay, you know what? I know we're not touching on these yet, but I think this was my favorite alone, so it would make my job so much easier. Oh my god, and my elevator pitch is a brain-to-brain social media platform. Stop wasting time typing and videoing and streaming, put a helmet on, and use non-invasive brain stimulation to put all of this directly into your brain. Can I just say how much easier my job would be if that was an actual thing? If I didn't need to sit there and come up with things and kind of pull people together, like if I could just think and have it occur, Extra. Okay, I'm just going to put this out there. You will be my favorite person in the world if you actually go on and invent this, and I will come and I'll come and I'll be your biggest hype man for it. Okay, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Okay, so moving back onto the game for a second, because I don't want to get too caught up in the competition in the background, that we will keep an eye on it over the course. You kind of touched a little bit before we went on our break there about the boats not being created, all uniform as such, and some of them were a little bit more equal than others, and so on and so forth. Far as I'm aware, you have quite an interesting story about the actual Autobots, don't you, Roberto? About how when you were trying to come up with your own Tesla-style invention, and that was one of them, wasn't it?
That was very funny because both Joel and I, but all the guys in the studios actually spent quite a good time researching on Tesla. But we had to invent something new, or at least that was we suppose we were doing. So just to avoid any spoiler, you know that you get on board of the Helios through these small boats that are remotely controlled. And we were thinking about it as a good idea. Well, that's interesting, using radio and something that it's not of that time to get on board that such a secret place like the Helios. Then it happened that pretty much after that we started developing the small boats, the radio controlled, that it came to my eyes an article about Tesla and his blueprints, and we discovered that he actually was researching on remotely controlled boats. And that is the kind of situation in which you feel a bit scared in somehow, because it's something like you were supposedly inventing it, but it wasn't. And
but it was something he actually had. He'd already started inventing. He was already doing it.
And, he was the one. I mean, not another scientist around this age. Nikola Tesla himself. And wow, it was very, very interesting.
So what you're telling us here, Rob, is that you are basically the same intellectual level as Tesla. You're on that same wavelength.
Actually, I was thinking more about the idea of having a white flash suggested by Nikola Tesla. Also because I don't remember who of us was thinking about the remote-controlled boats.
Well, originally, we knew that these boats couldn't have a pilot because we didn't have the budget to animate or create a dude to be in front there to control the ship. So it was kind of a budgetary constraint. Okay, shit, we can't.
No. Let's not. No. It was a law reason because Tesla couldn't trust people to not hijack them on land. There's a law reason.
Exactly. But yeah, so the Helios goes through international waters, staying out of nations' business, and all of these remote control boats join up with the Helios in international waters from ports all across the world, from Sydney to New York, from Stockholm to Rio de Janeiro. The Helios patrols the globe and picks up prominent scientists from all over. But just the fact that our emergency solution of having the boats be remote controlled turning out to be an actual Tesla invention is just one of these things that, you call it luck, but in some way the game development gods were smiling on us that day.
Just kind of, you get this one for free. Here you go. Take it. Don't worry. We got you covered on this one. Abby Gamer says, I'm seeing art book and soundtrack. If I get the game, I'm buying those goodies for sure. The atmosphere sounds wicked. The collector's edition that is part of all of those is actually, it's really nifty. Not to sound too much like a shill here. buy, sell, but it is actually quite a very lovely collector's edition, and the digital book and the well, we will actually be sharing a little bit of the digital art book over the weekend, and kind of taking pages from it and sharing it out to everybody, because it is a very nice little look into the development and the design of the game. And the soundtrack, I mean, you know, we've played the Porcelain Pill track a couple of times, and the actual soundtrack of the game itself is still pretty darn amazing, if we do say so ourselves. So, quick look there. XP says, I love the idea of self-driving boats. Not even Tesla Motors is going there. I mean, it's only a matter of time. Like, there's literally a car in space right now. Like, they were that bored that they put a car in space. If they can put a car in space, they're gonna put a remote control boat. It's gonna happen. Let's be honest. There's bigger fish to fry right now in the world. But yeah, I could see it going there, Extro. Abby says, I think you guys may not know, the latest AI for cars is making mandatory stops at a red light even before it sees it with some kind of control mechanism. So that must be some kind of, they must have some kind of onboard thing where they program where all the red light spaces are in a location, and they get told to slow down in advance of them. That makes sense. Self-automated vehicles are something that, you know, the world's kind of dabbled in a little bit, sometimes successfully, sometimes not quite as successfully, but yeah, I could see that.
And I mean, as we're talking about Tesla Motors, as we wanted to modernize Tesla for his role in our game, Elon Musk was a pretty obvious role model to some degree.
I could see that. I could see that. I mean, when we were discussing earlier in the first half of the show about, you know, characters that are basically real-life video game protagonists, even though you know, a lot of people aren't that interesting, and you might find this hard to believe, but us three are not that interesting as people, although I'm sure we've all got our cool, interesting angles to us. But yeah, someone like Musk is very much in that same vein, where you kind of look at every angle of their existence and you're like, oh wow, like you are just dialed up to 11 on everything, aren't you? Like you are a video game protagonist. You are a movie lifestyle. So I'm basing the kind of game version of Tesla off that kind of MO. I can see that. That makes a lot of sense. While we're on the subject of modernizing Tesla, actually says a little bit of a silly question for the Q&A, and you know what, we'll move on to the Q&A now. I think we've got a handful of questions on hand here, and of course we're more than happy to take questions over the course of the stream. But if you've got anything literally burning, then please go to the doctor. But if you have anything burning as a question that you want an answer to right now, get it in the chat, and we will openly and transparently answer as much as possible. Extra says, a bit of a silly question for the Q&A. The Helios is obviously really ahead of its time. Is that why you're using Art Deco aesthetics in the 1800s? Now, the aesthetic is something that, let's not beat around the Tesla bush. The Deco style is very, very, it's very identifiable. You look at it and you know exactly what you're looking at. You know, other games that people have kind of compared this to purely off looks alone is BioShock. I'm sure you folks have heard 1,000,001 times, and even those in the chat are probably, you may be looking at screenshots and going, wait a minute, that's BioShock, right? But, you know, that's just the style of the actual environment. That's the style of the look. And, you know, also because if you want to make something with a lot of metal and make it look really shiny, Unreal Engine is the engine to do it in, because it does it so darn well. You know, that's why Gears of War was just so phenomenal looking back in the day, because it was just a really good spectacle of that particular type of environment and you know, aesthetic. But yeah, given the dating of the game and, you know, the time period that it's set in, how conscious was that art design as far as showing that Tesla was kind of ahead of the pack when it comes to, you know, aesthetic? And, you know, you mentioned he was very big at, he was grand. He always wanted to showcase. Is the implication here that he kind of would have also had the kind of art pods on hand? He would have had all of the great creative aesthetic influences around and been like, hey, your art looks amazing. I'm going to build a whole thing off here, even though it, as you Extro has said, it's a little bit ahead of the time, right? Like, it's a tiny bit further down the line than when Helios is set.
Yeah, as the guy that asked noticed, it's related to the idea of an alternative history. Moreover, dealing with a steampunk adventure, the kind of artistic styles that better fit that atmospheres were Art Deco and Art Nouveau, together with Victorian, of course. Actually, first of all, Art Deco and Art Nouveau are very easily understandable. You can clearly say that's Art Deco, that's Art Nouveau, and I don't know if it's a good or not. But if you shake those elements with the idea of video games, for sure, the first title that comes to your mind is BioShock. At the same time, the funny thing is that we didn't have BioShock as a reference when we started thinking about the game. I leave this to Joel to fully explain it, but there were other games that were in our references. Yet,
Joel, take the floor.
Much metal, I leave to Joel that, but before it. For our art director, knowing that he was free to go a couple of decades ahead of the time that we were speaking about, not so much because Close to the Sun is set at the very end of 19th century. But yet, those were the kind of styles that better suit a huge ship, so metal, wood, and there was quite a big research on it. And we're pretty satisfied with the aesthetics. And the fact that Close to the Sun is considered as BioShocky actually is something like a medal for us, because we're speaking about probably one of the most important games of this time. Yet, for the kind of game reference, I leave to Joel to fully explain what we were looking for.
Sure. I mean, we're a small indie company. The team that made Close to the Sun, we were 10 to 15 people max at any one given time during the development. So we knew from day one, we don't have the A, track record, or B, the expertise, or 3, the manpower to reach for BioShock. That's something way beyond our capabilities. So the fact that that gets mentioned, that's just really encouraging that people would take that as a comparison. That just means that we did our artistic job well. In terms of game references, we were looking at something way more small. We were looking at Soma, we were looking at Firewatch, we were looking at Amnesia, some more traditional first-person horror adventures to some degree. So we knew that this would obviously be an indie experience. So we had to calibrate based on what we would be able to achieve. Then obviously, as we mentioned at the start of the stream, being able to pivot when stuff works or when stuff doesn't work proved to be quite essential.
One moment, because I am looking and seeing that my preview here looks... Oh, are we back? I think we're back. I think we had one of those aforementioned potential outages that we talked about there for a second. I do apologize. Super strange because OBS is not showing any frames dropped in the slightest, but it had a hiccup. Apologies for those that were watching and missed the end. Do you just want to quickly go over the last... I know you've just explained to basically dead air here, so Rob, we're going to hear this again. You want to just quickly go over the last minute of there again for me, please, Joel?
Sure. No, in terms of game references that we were looking at, that was more Soma, that was more Firewatch, Amnesia, Dark Descent. Those were the games that we were trying to reach for. Outlast to some degree as well. But all of those titles are quite difficult for us to reach for.
Not working?
No, it's good. It's good.
Ah, okay.
It just had a little hiccup, little notification hiccup. We're good. Carry on. You mentioned Soma. Soma is probably one of my top 10 games of all time. And I think it's one of the reasons why Closer to the Sun, I really, really enjoy what it attempts and what it achieves and what it pulls off for that very same nature. You know, a lot of people have made that kind of Bioshock connection. A lot of people have kind of made this, one-to-one comparison between them. But I feel like Soma is very much more of a bed buddy than Bioshock in this nature. Purely because of the exploration, the story, the traversal, the kind of walking through a somewhat waterbound, utopia, and it's the immediate aftermath of those events. And honestly, I know this is a Close to the Sun launch, but I would actually implore anyone, if you haven't played Soma yet and you enjoy stories of this nature, please do check that out, because it is a fantastic experience, and it does what it does very, very, very well. And I can see a lot of Soma in Close to the Sun. You know, when you mentioned that as being one of the kind of benchmarks that you'd looked at, it makes a lot of sense. You hit a lot of the same notes in the structure and the kind of pacing of it. It's that, it's investigation. It's kind of all of the exploration of this, fantastic, almost alien by this point atmosphere, with the pace and everything being amped up through, moments of danger where you are at you are at a complete and utter disadvantage. You don't really have the ability to fight back. And that's something I want to kind of touch on a little bit. You mentioned that the game's not really much of a horror. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is pretty gory in places. It does have a good amount of blood and guts on display at the best of times. But it is way more of a thriller in that nature. And Rose is a journalist. She is not a combatant. Personally, I'd say if I was going aboard a big spooky boat to find my sister, I'd probably bring at least a switchblade with me if I needed to, just in case, it's maybe. But Rose isn't a fighter, she's going there under the premise of everything being normal and fine and as to be expected, and kind of finds herself in a situation where there are, and, we'll talk briefly vague to avoid spoilers, but there are a lot of things that can cause harm on this ship, and they are a threat, and you don't really have the means as a person to fight back, and evasion is your only real answer in this situation. How much of a, was there ever a point where you were kind of developing things like the chase scenes and kind of looking at the kind of the vulnerability of Rose in this ship? Was there ever a point where that was considered to be different? Was Rose ever really envisioned as being someone that would be able to kind of hold her own and fight back and kind of, because she's tough. Like, don't get me wrong, I would probably, by the second I stepped off the Helios and walked into that lobby, stepped onto the Helios and walked into that lobby, I would probably be losing it. I'd probably be on that boat immediately trying to find which of the buttons programmed to get me back to London, like in a heartbeat. She's tough. But was she ever in a position where, like, combat was something that was considered? Because these kind of things, when they're done well, they're normally designed 100% around that premise of you're vulnerable, and that adds to the terror. When games are scary, a lot of the time it's because of those kind of limitations. You look at things like Resident Evil back in the old days when it had tank controls and limited camera angles. A lot of the time what you saw in Resident Evil wasn't scary, it was just you could hear something and you couldn't see it. And if it did get close to you, your ability to move away was severely limited because the control schemes were still being kind of figured out by developers back then. They hadn't really figured out the 3D movement and stuff just right. So a lot of the time it's a very conscious decision to make something scary is what influences this. Was Rose ever kind of, designed in a way to be kind of a competent, or from minute one was it her vulnerability?
Well, initially we had a Tesla tool, an item that Rose would pick up really early in her adventure, in the museum, in fact. She would pick up this Tesla tool that is an all-purpose remote activator. It's like it can transfer electricity wirelessly to any device, any door, any type of machinery. That was her master key to some degree to the Helios.
Got you.
It was never really intended for direct combat, more so puzzle solving and exploration, being able to manipulate the environment remotely. But that was one of those features that we had to cut fairly early on. We were mentioning pivoting before. That was one of our crucial pivots that made the game much better in terms of polish. We could spend the time required to make Close to the Sun be as clean of an experience as it is, thanks to us taking that tough decision early on. So while we were pretty conscious about not having combat from the beginning, because that was something that we estimated quite correctly that was beyond our manpower and time frame to execute well. We did have some ideas for how to make Rose explore the Helios more confidently than she does at the moment.
Wow, that's interesting. I'd like to see some of that stuff, if there is ever any of that lying around. That might make for some nice, cool post-mortem stuff to share out with the people, because that stuff, just from a pure fan perspective, that stuff absolutely fascinates me, top to bottom. Absolutely adore it. Abby and Extra seem at the stream buffered. Yeah, I do apologize. As we kind of said at the very top of the show, working remotely means that I don't have my super powerful, all-impressive office-related internet connection that I miss so much. Believe me, trying to update Modern Warfare on PC and its 96 gig patches every 4 days is taking its toll on my home internet connection right now. But yeah, there might be the occasional buffer, so thank you very much for your patience in that matter. Question from Abby saying, will the devs, will there be Steam badges and cards later? They like owning game-specific emotes and badges and cards that come through Steam. Is that something we can talk about here?
There are.
And I need to make sure that we're not breaking any contracts or anything. We're all going to be out of a job by the end of the stream. I don't think... Tell you what. Leave that one with me, Abby. Leave that one with me. I'll take any questions that we haven't got a direct answer for right now, as I'll throw into the forums after the fact. Leave that one with me. We should have an answer for that somewhere. It's just whether we've spoken about it yet or not. should be an interesting one. So Close to the Sun does Close to the Sun strictly follow Tesla's thought process, or is it just this kind of vague ideology? And I think we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but how one-to-one, and we did actually receive this as a question. Well, we'll move on to the Q&A side, as we have kind of been doing. Tesla and Edison are kind of carry on.
The Tesla's thought process was pretty interesting when you compare it to Edison. Part of the rivalry that the two had was Tesla worked for Edison for a period of time. They had a disagreement and parted ways. Edison's methodology was try every solution until you come up with the right one. Essentially just iterating, experimenting, trying different things, while Tesla's methodology was more think until you have the correct solution, and once you have thought it, then build it. Tesla had what he referred to as white flashes, when he would see a machine or say an engine or whatever it was he was inventing, and he would see it in its entirety, in its full, complete form. And once he had that, he could build it. While Edison's methods were far more time-consuming and resource-intensive. But we tried to honor that idea of white flashes, that idea of having ideas emerge in their entirety. And that is kind of tied into some of the experiments that eventually go wrong aboard the Helios. It's not tied in as tightly as we would want, but there are aspects to it that we try to point to.
So with regards to that, it was very much an almost kind of that white flash almost sounds like a reverse engineering kind of thing, where he would basically see the idea of, oh wow, look at this thing, and I can see it in its form, and I can see everything that it does, and then just kind of work his way backwards to every individual thing that would need to be done in order to actually make that a thing, as opposed to working the other way around and not really knowing the final shape of everything in there. That's quite interesting, actually. I wasn't aware of that with the whole white flash thing. That's pretty cool. I think we've all had that to somewhat of a degree, but Tesla sounds like he definitely took it to a level that very few, if any, have been able to since. So since you mentioned Edison, are we going to glimpse like AC? Hold up, I think we have another buffer, which is strange. I think it's actually a Steam issue. I'm going to be honest with you, because we are not dropping a frame at all. I think it might just be the Steam RTMP server is having a moment. Take this second to... hopefully it'll come back up shortly. Bear with us, take this opportunity to grab a drink if need be.
Come again? You're really robotic at the moment.
Oh wow, is it doing the thing? Is that better?
Not really.
Testing. 1 moment. Testing. Better? Sounds okay locally. I'm guessing Discord's having a moment.
Can't hear you.
Okay, folks, we're having a very brief technical issue. Do you guys hear me okay now? Can you hear me in chat?
Can you hear him?
I can hear him, but robotic.
You're back and fine. Okay, it seems like Discord is having a little moment.
But you can hear me, Joel, yeah?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
So it's more on his side.
Give me 1 moment. I'm going to disconnect and reconnect, and then we are going to...
I think you're good now.
Yeah, is that better?
Now I can hear you.
Awesome. Yep. Awesome. Sorry, you guys could hear me fine. You guys and girls could hear me perfectly fine, but the folks in the Discord chat could not, and apparently we've lost... There we go. The folks in the Discord, Rob and Joel, weren't hearing me well. Our call was a little wonky. We're back. Talking about Edison, are we going to be glimpsing the AC versus DC rivalry, like calling out one another?
I mean, definitely in terms of rivalry, in our alternate take on history, the Wardenclyffe Corporation, which is Tesla's creation, is continuously under industrial espionage by Edison's agents. So the Helios has to some degree been infiltrated by spies, essentially, that are trying to see what the Helios is doing and report back to Edison or inventions and blueprints that are being developed aboard the Helios. So their rivalry is definitely alive and well. In our case, when it comes to the AC/DC discussion, in our case, that ship has sailed. That was a short debate, and the world moved on much more rapidly. So technology has gone beyond that initial spat over which form of current is the better one. But definitely the rivalry is alive and well.
So, follow-up question, and this one's for me. Favorite AC/DC song? Just while we're there.
I don't know, because I like too many.
You got to play one. You got to play one. You can only hear one more AC/DC song for the rest of your life. What are you picking?
Thunderstruck.
Thunderstruck. I mean, it's thematic. It makes sense. What about you, Joel?
I wait well, Joel.
Well, yeah, Thunderstruck. I mean,
could be interesting to deal with.
You're trying to think of one that isn't rude, aren't you? That's what you're trying to do. All of your favorites are the rude ones, aren't they? I can tell.
I was thinking that an interesting point about AC/DC that we are speaking about Tesla and Edison, but I remember that it was used for Iron Man 2, so another great scientist and inventor was...
the old Tony Stark, AC/DC involvement. I like it. You see, we're making connections everywhere. Though this doesn't mean that Tony Stark is going to be in any potentially related sequel. We'll just quash that there. This doesn't mean that Iron Man's going to show up and throw down on the Helios.
I guess we should ask Marvel to have it, and it's...
You know what? I'm pretty sure. Let me just get them on the phone. Has anyone got Marvel's phone number? I'm sure they'll be fine with it. I think they're pretty quiet now that they're done with the Avengers. I don't really think they've got anything else going on. So, why not? Why not? Okay, so another QA question that we were QA. We really should think of a better way of QA/Q&A. They're two very different things, even though they both have a similar thing. And we'll try and avoid too many spoilers here if we're capable of doing so. This was one that we received through Twitter. Regarding time manipulation. Now,
exploitation.
Yeah. Without going too deep in, and this might be something that we can't talk too heavy on without giving away too much. So we'll try our best, but if we can't, then we do apologize to the Twitter user that asked. Time manipulation can be a very tricky thing. We were just talking about the Avengers there, and God knows their handling of time manipulation and time travel and the rules around it has definitely caused a fair few questions in a post Endgame universe. And honestly, I kind of applaud you for even. Apologies if you can hear that motorbike in the background. Someone's obviously decided to take it out for a joyride. It must be incredibly difficult when you're looking at bringing something like time manipulation or time travel or any kind of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, as a certain doctor mentioned, into the front of a story. Were there any kind of hard and fast rules that you set yourself when it came to how you handle time manipulation in the game? Are we kind of looking at, hey, we follow the Back to the Future rule of time travel, or is it, hey, we're looking at the Terminator rule of time travel? Because everyone handles it a little bit differently, and things that make sense in one universe can 100% not make sense in another one.
Sure.
How did you folks approach that? Because, I mean, you must have known it was going to raise questions. You must have known that some people would kind of reach a certain point and go, wait a minute, no, wait, I need the rules. What are the time travel rules of Close to the Sun?
As you enter our office, in the entrance off to the left, there's a game cabinet. It has tons of arcade games on it. the motif of this cabinet is Back to the Future. So
Oh, wow.
I think unconsciously, as we're just entering and exiting the office every day, that vision of the Back to the Future game cabinet there in the corner kind of just ate away at us to the point where that became a feature of the story that we wanted to tell. So if you would have to pick a logic that our universe follows, I guess Back to the Future is pretty close.
Okay.
We like to we don't have a flux capacitor or stuff like that. We play around with a thing called the one electron theory, which is a thing that Richard Feynman, one of physics' greatest scientists, entertained as a thought experiment for a while, that electrons would be the things that move forward in time, and positrons are moving backwards. But they are all the same electron. There has always been one electron, and it's the same one that just moves back and forth through time infinitely.
Wow.
So through that,
my mind's just melting a little bit trying to entertain that. If you, I apologize if I look like I'm just staring off into space in the chat, but my brain just tripped over itself trying to entertain that. So bear with me. I'm not the cleverest of people. He's doing very good at explaining it slowly for me. Carry on, Joel.
So in that theoretical space, there would be the key to infinite energy, and once you have infinite energy, well, you can do a lot of really interesting things.
Yeah.
Traveling in time being one of them. So that's basically how we approached it. It was something that grew over time as the story and the environment kind of came together. But that's also the key to stuff that might go wrong. If you have infinity of anything, bad stuff will happen.
I'm just gonna take a one second moment here. I've noticed that my boss has fed in his own Tesla invention, but no, you are not allowed to enter this competition. Although their suggestion of a Tesla coil electric guitar would have been good, although the fingertips may not have actually survived. Honestly, I feel like Prince probably owns or owned a Tesla coil electric guitar. I'm not entirely sure why. It just seems like the kind of thing that Prince would have had. Like, you know, in one of his many mansions, one of his purple carpeted, water fountained, houses, he probably had an electric guitar that shot lightning. Great invention. Not entirely sure if the stage show would survive. But I like the idea. You're not allowed a copy of the game, no, boss. You already have one. Welcome back to the PC, Abby. Good to see you. Extro says, the one electron theory does trip your mind, and all the quantum implications if it were true. New agey people may even reuse it for weird theories on conscious and souls and stuff that could be very good game mechanic fodder. I mean, there is a certain amount, again, I'm conscious of time, so I don't want to spend too long, because once you start talking about science and theories and implications, you kind of go down a rabbit hole, and next thing you know, you've spent 5 hours talking and you're in a bar somewhere. But there is a certain degree of science where you can almost understand where early day kind of religion and beliefs, and even to a certain extent magic, came from, things that we kind of take for granted as scientific fact and whatnot now, without any context and without any understanding and explanation, must have seemed like magic, like utterly fascinating. People look at new inventions and new implications, and they can't think, their brain can't interpret it any other way than this is the work of spirits or the soul or gods, and seeing Extra kind of jump on that there, saying the one electron theory kind of if it were to be real, the quantum implications as to what that means for people and, how they exist and where they exist and when they exist and everything like that. Like, it's a fascinating and utterly terrifying concept to try and wrap your head around. Not that we should, really say that we're the arbiters of any direction on that, but it always makes for fantastic thought experiments, top to bottom. It
Definitely.
really does.
But I mean, just give me two magnets. Magnets blow my mind. I don't understand how they work. Well, yeah, I understand that there's like a description. I understand the theory behind it, but still, just put two magnets in my hand and I feel the forces of two stones just pulling at each other. There's some voodoo shit right there.
Yeah, 100%. Like that is, I think, was it the Insane Clown Posse that made that track with those magnets? How do they work? I think I'm right. I think I'm right with my pop culture reference on there, but it kind of got memed on quite a bit in the way that the ICP often does. But they made a song about miracles, and their entire thing in the Summer Magnets was magnets. Look at magnets are a miracle. Like it's this force that you can literally feel the presence of something without even it existing or being there, and science in so many ways kind of continues to evolve in that. Abby mentions that since Tesla was so open in terms of his findings, how hard was it to alternate whole presentation? How hard was it to alternate the whole presentation, and what character traits you feel are the most fascinating for him? So I guess it's kind of what kind of aspects of Tesla's personality did you kind of find the most fascinating and the most tempting to draw upon? I mean, we kind of mentioned that he was quite larger than life in so many ways, so, you didn't need to kind of flanderize him quite so much. But when you were developing Close to the Sun Tesla, which of his character traits were the biggest draws to you? Like what were you hoping to achieve from his character development over the course of the game?
Well, I mean, the fact that Tesla is or was a fancy dresser, that he liked to wear white gloves wherever he went, to be dressed as a gentleman. Once he had his initial success, he could often be seen dining with artists, with poets, with writers, with musicians. He had this aspect to himself to want to seem proper, even if his mind and manners weren't always on the same level. The fact that he late in life falls in love with a pigeon is kind of tragic and also just fascinating. The way that his mind worked could be explored from so many angles. So we in particular harped on his wish to be grander than life, his aspirations for changing the world. He had inventions such as the death ray, which wasn't a real thing, but something that he wanted to work on and move towards in order to end war. He had these grandiose ideas that he pursued, and that was something that we really wanted to maintain and extrapolate on when it came to Nikola Tesla's ambition, so to speak.
On another side, probably it's interesting to think that he was always considered as a good guy, the poor guy, meaning the genius one that was overwhelmed by unlucky events. While in Close to the Sun, we even played with the fact that, but was he really a good guy? was he really interested in only in good aspects of development and science for people? So also giving him a shade, something like a dark aspect was interesting, because also in games it's usually when he's there he's or the good guy, is the good inventor that helps the main character of different games. I was thinking about The Order, for example. While in this case it was interesting to think, but yeah, what if, and then adding other elements to think about.
Hey,
I mean,
sorry, carry on.
we really strived. You were mentioning that Close to the Sun is kind of like a thriller to some degree, more so than a horror. And that is something that we pursued quite intentionally. We wanted to always have mystery as our friend, as our ace in our pocket, so to speak.
Gotcha.
Any time that we could lean on mystery and create questions in the player's mind, and then slowly feed answers to these mysteries and unexplained events and just weird things that the player encounters. Any time that we could lean on that, that would be a win, because mystery is just inherently a engine of itself. It even if you as a player don't want to turn the corner because of what might pop out or what might threaten you, if you have mystery there, if you have that curiosity, then you will turn that corner despite your unwillingness to do so. So mystery in that thriller aspect was definitely something that we wanted to reach for.
No, I 100% get that. That makes a lot of sense. Just taking 2 seconds here, just I love this question, and it has opened up my, you know what, I might even go and mod this myself in some way. Thank you again, putting the link up. For those that may not be aware, we are currently running some giveaways for the Steam copy of Close to the Sun, where if you give us a super cool Tesla-esque invention underneath that tweet, we will throw a key out at the end of the stream to our favourite ones. Seeing a couple of pretty dope ones in there, so I'll be interested to see what we get at the end of the next hour or so when we wrap up, I think we're looking at. So keep those coming in, as well as extras in the chat. I do remember yours, don't think I have forgotten it already. But following up on extra here, will we see some serious Tesla slash pigeon shipping in the next game? I'm trusting that you're both very modern men, you're aware of the concept of shipping, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. No comment.
No comment. You see, I just can't get it out of my head now that Tesla would have probably really liked Hatful Boyfriend. Either of you heard of Hatful Boyfriend, the pigeon dating simulator? I feel like Hatful Boyfriend was the game that Tesla would have maybe made if he lived long enough for video games to be something that he would have created. And now I've got that stuck in my head and I can't get the picture out. We need a Tesla version of Hatful Boyfriend out there. Maybe we'll get in touch with them and see if we can combine for something. That would be great. Abby says, that does sound like great minds breaking under their own weight. I know it sounds melodramatic, but if there was a way that Tesla would have blamed people who took, and I'm going to apologize because the chat is blurring out words that may or may not be swear words, so I'm not sure what that starred out word is in there. But if there was a way Tesla would have blamed people who took work too far in a destructive way. I think that's kind of a little bit what we touched on earlier about the kind of his creation and his intent being kind of taken in different directions by people that came on board under his supervision and kind of ran amok in that particular way. 100% can see that breaking out in there. Okay, you know what? Sorry, carry on.
Just on that topic, not all of the scientists that join the Helios are necessarily moral beacons, you know.
No.
Some of these scientists are simply brilliant, but maybe not ethical. So aboard the Helios, results matter, but Tesla is the one who's supposed to be supervising all of the experiments to one degree or another. But as the Helios grows in prominence, becomes more and more of a hotspot for technology and development, supervising everything that goes on is a tough task. So while Tesla's ambitions might have been in the right place, the reach might have been beyond control, anyone's control. Yes, there's Tesla at the helm of everything, but he's still only a man. So other scientists in pursuit of breakthroughs might cut corners. Other agencies, such as Edison, for example, might want to exploit those ambitions and sabotage, if at all possible, those experiments that reach that far. So there's a lot of nuance to this pursuit of greatness. I hope that we did a good enough job in framing that arc in the story of the game, but those were the aspirations anyway, that we would get those conflicts where your aspirations are good, but maybe not responsible, I guess.
I must admit, one of my absolute favorite things in the game, even taking the focus off Edison for a moment, for a brief moment, as much as it is tempting to just stare at him forever, was the portrayal of other kind of well-known scientists within the game. Well, one of my personal favorites being the kind of treatment and presence of a certain young hotshot, kind of flamboyant German scientist that forever was frustrating the staff of the Helios, and kind of his treatment of the entire thing is what basically just the world's greatest leisure cruise, and kind of just not really taking it all that seriously, and everyone kind of being irritated by how brilliant he was or how brilliant he saw himself, and so on and so forth. That must have been a lot of fun to kind of look at these other kind of intellectuals that were kind of able to bring onto the Helios, even if it was just in a, mentioning through other characters and lore rather than a physical presence. It must have been really fun to look at these characters and imagine them.
Especially since so many of these really well-known scientists that are household names overlap in history. So the fact that Tesla is one age and this scientist that you're alluding to is at a much younger age.
The scientist formerly known as which
the fact that he happens to be very young at that point in time when our story kicks off.
Of course.
That's just pretty fun. And just adds more fuel to making this alternate take on history be more grounded in the world that we know, even though we are extrapolating and building, accelerating certain things in many places.
Which I think is one of the greatest praises that I could honestly give to the game as its whole. Extro kind of saying there that they agree with the German scientist trademark shout out. They were kind of fanboying at the at his room on the Helios. I think it's one of the greatest tributes, and one of the things I could say the most about the game is that it really does show a love for not just Tesla, not just you know. It's easy to look at a game and kind of pull all of the some of its parts apart and paint it in a very kind of redundant way. But I think the kind of love and the passion for science and the joy that is shown in kind of playing around with all of these notable historic characters and imagining them in this alternate universe, but without stepping too far away from, you know, their legitimate actual real-life counterparts. You know, we've spoken a lot over the course of the stream about the kind of nature of keeping their intent and their ideology intact while still being able to replicate them in a way that makes sense for a video game world. I think that kind of love and care really does show through in the story and in the Helios and the characters within it in itself, even if it is in audio recordings or text entries or character references. It's possibly one of the greatest things about the game is just that kind of celebration of all of these different facets of science and invention and innovation, and this kind of universe that you've created off the back of these real life characters, which, you know, it's just fun to see people having fun with this, you know, because that's, at the end of the day, you know, as serious as the game's subject matter can be, and as much, you know, questions of morality and intention, you know, everything like that, it's got to show that there was fun involved in making it, and I think it really does shine through. Abby says the intro to a game has to be top notch. How much time does it take to get it right here? How long did it take for you to nail down what you wanted the first moments on the... Well, not even the Helios. I mean, you know, the first moments of the game aren't on the Helios. They're on the auto boat that we debuted at the beginning of the stream, and I got very, very, very wet. Dried off very quickly, though, those of you may have noticed. What's weird that? Well, we'll say there's a Tesla-invented hairdryer that just does, like, Star Trek-level whole-body clothes drying in an instant. It's like a microwave, but, like, more safe. But the start of the game... how long did it take you to settle on what you wanted the start of of Close to the Sun to be? You know, your introduction to Rose as a character, to Ada as a character, who we learn a little bit about her and her history through her letter to Rose, and a little bit about her predicament. How long did it take for you to settle on that as what you wanted the first moments of Close to the Sun to actually be?
I'm not sure we actually ended this process yet.
Really? Is it still a little bit of contention between the gameplay? Like, you know, what was there? I mean, obviously there was probably alternate suggestions as to how the universe was introduced to people at the beginning, but yeah, you're saying that that's still something that you feel is ongoing?
Actually, I won't speak about it, but for sure.
There's somebody in Storm in a Teacup now that's just watching, and they're just scribbling Rob's name down furiously, like, see me tomorrow. They are livid right now.
Well, speaking seriously, I think that Rose and Ada were actually the most important characters, even considering Tesla.
Yeah.
Rose is the main character. Ada is the real reason why we are on the Helios. And I think Joel almost broke his head trying to give them the right feeling, the right shapes, the right vibes, I can say, to make people playing Close to the Sun really bound with both Rose and Ada. Because after all, we spoke a lot about science, but Close to the Sun is also a game very related with emotions and with feelings. And but I don't know, Joel, would you like to? Because I know how much time he spent rewriting, cutting this, adding that, and actually we almost had to shoot him to make the game actually get on Steam too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long process, and especially since we have a number of characters that all kind of needed their own voice, their own backgrounds and way to approach this very weird situation that they all find themselves in. At its core, as Rob was saying, it's a story about two sisters trying to find each other, despite dangers, despite horrors. It's really difficult to convey a lot that you want to have said in such short pieces of interchangeable dialogue between characters. I know that in our first drafts of script, of the story and dialogue and so on, as we were recording it and then edited it, put it in the game, the characters were so talkative that you as a player, you couldn't play the game correctly, because by the time that the first dialogue ended, you had already begun triggering the follow-up. So it became a very delicate splicing job of just, okay, let me trim some of this dialogue over here so I can expand the dialogue over here where we really need it. It was a long process, very brutal in some cases.
But you know what? Carry on, Rob.
Sometimes I almost feel sad for him, because it was like stabbing him and saying, no, this one has to...
No, you need to lose this. You need to lose it.
And often it was, they were all the correct calls, the correct decisions. It just hurts.
So I'm gonna take a little step for a second, and 100%, if it makes any difference for you and makes it any better, it is the right call. I'm a massive, for all of my faults, and I don't know if this is going to discredit me in the chat as a gamer. We've all got our poisons. I'm a massive fan of Destiny. I love kind of looter shooters. I love the kind of universe that Bungie built with it, and there is quite an infamous. There's a thing called strikes in that game where you dive in and you get a team of friends and you go in, and it's basically a dungeon. It's like a D&D dungeon. You run through, you kill the boss at the end, you get loot. That you repeat over and over. And there's quite an infamous one in the game where the audio triggers are... The characters are way too verbose for the audio triggers at the speed that people can run at it now, to the point where there'll be 4 or 5 audio barks from different characters all playing over each other and counteracting each other at any one given moment, and it's chaotic, and the community kind of embraces it, because it's kind of like this really goofy thing where the dialogue's really cheesy and one person has already contradicted themselves with another sentence before they finished saying the first one, and it's kind of this. It's kind of embraced in the way that kind of wonky things do get embraced by the community, but I can 100% see how hard it must be to look at something like that and go, but no, here's my exposition, here's my dialogue, here's my world building, here's these characters that, and God bless the voice of Rose has been something that people have really latched onto as a thing, because the voice acting in the game itself is absolutely phenomenal. Very, very well done. Seeing all of this well acted and well written and well put together dialogue and going, well, we don't really have time for that, or it doesn't really fit here, so but let's just get rid of it. And then you're like, but no, that really meant something. Oh, that must be really painful.
All of those emotional notes, all of those cool bits of research where I spend days coming up with brilliant exposition over how the science actually works.
And someone walks in and goes, yeah, we'll just lose it. Obviously there's more to it than that. I'm sure it wasn't quite that blasé, but I can see how that must have been an awful thing for you to be sulking now.
I'm drinking water, but I need some scotch.
Let's have a look. The intro is very in character, but I'm a sucker for the grand Titanic entrances, like Titanic the movie, the Starship Titanic, the game. Extra says, will we ever see the Helios in all of its full-blown glory for more than a glance? God, I'd imagine that must be tricky. How do you... I mean, on the one point, I've got to imagine there's a question of scale to begin with. You know, you start off on that order boat, you kind of see the Helios, but it's... You know, it's more of a silhouette, it's more of a suggestion, it's this kind of thing lurking off in the distance, and when you're in it, you're in it. I mean, I can't imagine something the size of, you know, in-game, I believe it's the largest boat ever built, I believe is the premise in the game, is how do you even begin to capture something of that scale without it losing all meaning, you know? Like at a certain point when you get close enough to something, like a sun, there you go, that's your one for the stream. When you get close enough to something, it begins to lose all kind of perspective, right? Like...
But you can see it in all its shape in the museum.
This is true. You do get... I think it's somewhere off to the... No, the death rays on the left. It's somewhere in here. It's been a while since I've been in this museum, honestly. I do love the guided tours here, but it's been a moment.
Apart from that, I guess you cannot... It's such a massive ship that to see it in its full shape, to see all of it all together, you have to be far from it.
Yeah, like super far.
And moreover, it's something like we can say it's the kind of thing that makes it even greater. But the fact that you know it's huge, you know it's beautiful, but you never have the real chance to deal with it because you're a human and your dimension is not fit to deal with something so big. And imagining it probably is even better than seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, as you enter the ship, we have these "You Are Here" maps where you can track your progress.
God, yeah. Those maps are utterly daunting. When the first time you come across those maps and you see exactly just how much is in the Helios, it's kind of almost overwhelming.
Yeah, and that's, again, another thing that we obviously wanted more. That was big, yes, but we wanted bigger. But yeah, to see the Helios in all its glory, in its heyday, before whatever thing that has gone wrong, I hope that we get that opportunity to return to the Helios and possibly see the aspects of the Helios that you don't get to venture in this time around. You get a pretty complete tour. As you begin your journey, you start at the rear of the Helios and you end your adventure in the front. And you travel up and down and through the bowels of the Helios and up to the deck. So you get to see quite a few areas of the Helios, but obviously you're skipping over quite large sections of this grand vessel.
Well, Rose is on a mission. She's got stuff to do, you know. She might want to swing by the gift shop and pick something up on the way home, but, you know, she's a busy lady. She's got places to go, people to see, sisters to find, and so on and so forth.
Things to run from.
She has a social life.
Yeah, she's busy. It's hella busy. All right, you know what? You mentioned a minute ago, Scotch. I'm parched. I think that we should move this to the bar. The museum's got its charms, but this statue's kind of creeping me out just a tiny bit. So we're going to take one final break, just for us to go and freshen ourselves up and kind of get in line with everything. Once again, the link up in the chat. D3, could you do one more time for me? One more time. There we go, thank you. We got our little competition running over the course of the show. Please feel free to give your own Tesla-esque inventions in there, and we'll throw out some keys at the end of the show. When we get back, we're going to be live in one of the lower bars of the Helios. Unfortunately, because we are on working hours, I won't be having any alcoholic beverages, although you two, please feel free. I'm sure you are both parched as I am. I'm going to stick to some water, good old-fashioned H2O, keeping with the scientific parlance. We're going to throw the BRB screen up. We're going to get the theme song running one more time, take a very brief break, and when we get back, we'll answer a couple more questions. I'm going to test these two on their Tesla knowledge with a little pop quiz, which I'm a little annoyed because just through passive dialogue, Joel's already mentioned a couple of things that were questions in this, which makes me feel like this quiz isn't going to be as hard as I thought it was for them, which I'm happy about because it means that they know their stuff, but I'm sad about, because we can't point fingers and laugh, which is kind of what we're all here for with these kind of quizzes. But we'll get a few more questions answered, we'll get a quiz on the go, and we'll answer any other business before we wrap up the show in the finale of this stream. So, I'm going to leave you all for 2 or 3 more minutes. Once again, please enjoy the soundtrack. It is fantastic. One of my favorite pieces of music, and we will be right back in a matter of moments.
Feel it in the air. There's something coming. The consequences are building. I don't want to be a sinking ember. The all remember as a warning. What have you done? What's in the darkest water? I'm scared to death that I won't make it out of here alive. Did somebody say I feel we're sinking deeper with more speed the more we strive? Is that what we get for playing too close to the sun? I feel a little scared. A storm is coming. The thunder's breaking upon us. I don't understand, but I feel the danger. The static and the sparks can hold. What have you done? What's in the darkest water? I'm scared to death that I won't make it out of here alive. Did somebody say I feel we're sinking deeper with more speed the more we strive? Is that what we get for playing too close to the sun? it's all set ablaze. Oh, what have we done? Is that what we get for playing too close to the sun?
Okay, right, that's a little bit better, and if I'm not mistaken, and I've got the right buttons set up, we should now be in the bar. Yes! Success! We're in the bar, this is fantastic. This is my favourite place on the Helios, I'm just saying, unrelated reasons. As mentioned, I'm unfortunately on the clock, and therefore I'm going to be treating myself to the remainder of the coffee I made a couple of hours ago, which, you know, cold coffee, it's got its perks. Right, we all enjoy a good brew now and then. Maybe, you know, I'm not going to touch that. That didn't go down too well. Welcome back, Joel. Welcome back, Roberto. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For joining us. I'd offer you a drink, but honestly, the range here is a little bit limited. The prices are a little bit expensive, as you would imagine, on something like the Helios, and honestly, I just don't know how I'm going to get them to you. International shipping being what it is at the moment, you'd probably be able to get a hangover of your own by the time it arrived. So we'll just have to. I'll just have to have these ones myself off camera later. So yeah, final segment of the show, wrap up any other business and, of course, our little Tesla-related quiz. I'm going to get that quiz out the way now. I want to start it off strong. I want to give you guys a little bit of a testing. Again, I don't know how accurate any of these questions are. I corresponded them against Wikipedia as much as I could. So I think they're authentic, but I feel like I may get schooled as much as you are here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to ask you individually, one by one, a question each. So I'll start off with Joel, ask him a question. I'll start off with Rob, ask him a question. If one of you gets it wrong, the other person has the opportunity to steal it, okay? So I'll ask Joel. If he gives an incorrect answer, Rob gets a chance to steal it. And, are we stuck? Have we had a moment? Let me just double check. Steam, are we looking okay? Abby and Extra, are we having a little bit of a buffer? Are we having a buffer? Buffer. Give it a second. These things do occur at the best of times, and I look fantastic in that freeze frame, oh my god. So just wait for one moment.
I like you to be a bartender, right?
Oh, Steam. Steam. You know what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop the bitrate down a little bit for the end, see if that makes it a little bit easier. On the stream, let's drop that down and see if that brings us into a little bit more legibility for Steam. It's obviously having a hard time. It's had a long day. It's only Tuesday, and the week is already struggling. Come on, Steam. We believe in you. We believe in you. We believe in you. Can't sing too many things, otherwise we'll get done for royalty. It's like 10 seconds you're allowed, isn't it? Like 10 seconds? Let me have a look and see. Do we have ourselves live? Come on. Okay, what we're going to do is, I feel like the best course of action, because this is going actually to go out locally as well, so we are just going to carry on as if it is functioning. When it comes back, it comes back, and we'll take it from there. So, going to be a little bit weird, a little bit like the wrestlers right now. I don't know if anyone's seen the WWE are still wrestling, but there's nobody in the audience, so they're just kind of walking out in front of cameras, and it's two people. Oh, no, I think we're back. I think we're back. Awesome. Awesome. Good timing. We were just saying that we were just going to carry on regardless until it came back and just act amongst ourselves, similar to anyone that might have seen the WWE wrestling right now, where they are acting out their trade in front of empty theaters, and it's just two people playing up the crowd and shouting at people even though there's nobody there. And it's actually kind of amazing. It's pretty cool to watch. You got to respect that hustle, even if it does look a little bit weird. But welcome back, everyone. We do apologize for that. One more Steam hiccup into the breach does happen occasionally. So yeah, we're going to go through. I've got a list of 9 questions here. The idea is that you'll get 4 each, and I've got 1 as a tiebreaker, just in case this does happen. I'm going to give you a question. There'll be 4 possible answers. You choose one, and if you get it wrong, I pass it over to the other person, and whoever has the most points at the end is the winner, and the ultimate Tesla fan. Assuming that these questions are correct, which we'll find out together. I'm sure there is enough smart heads in the chat that'll be able to point me out if my fact-checking was wrong. So, here we go. Starting with you, Joel. Question 1. Tesla was born in 1856, correct?
In 1856.
1856. Which country was he born? What is the country that he was born in now known as? Okay. Is it A, Germany, B, Croatia, C, America, or D, Turkey?
Croatia.
You're going for B, Croatia. Are you sure?
That is my final answer.
Okay, yeah. That is correct. That is correct. That is a point for Joel. 100% he was born. I'm not going to try and pronounce what it was originally called because I would butcher it. Do either of you know the pronunciation of the original?
Actually, I remember that it was Serbian and not Croatian, but I guess it depends on where the...
We'll put an asterisk beside that one. Put an asterisk beside that one, depending on who you believe. Okay, Rob, this one's for you. Which year did Tesla journey to America?
Interesting.
Was it A, 1884, B, 1872, C, 1889, or D, 1878?
Actually, I'm gonna jump on it. The only number that I remember you said is 1884.
1884?
Yeah, it's my last answer because I don't remember the other one.
Well, you know what? Your stab in the dark paid off. That was correct. So well done. That's a point apiece. Well done. Okay. Which fellow inventor, upon arriving in America, Joel, did he start working for? Which fellow inventor did he start plying his trade under immediately upon arriving? Was it A, Westinghouse? Was it B, Edison? Was it C, Marconi? Or was it D, Einstein?
Well, I've already actually worked for both Westinghouse and Edison at different periods in time.
Yeah, that's why I put it in there. It's a little bit of a curveball, but which one was first?
I'm gonna go with Edison first and then Westinghouse. So Edison.
That is correct. That is correct. Westinghouse obviously then taking over the majority of his patents later on after the fact. Okay, Rob. I feel bad for Rob actually. I think he's got some of the harder ones here. From his laboratory in Colorado Springs, Tesla according to law, managed to light 200 lamps without the use of wires. From which distance? How far away, from which distance? Was it A, 15 miles? Was it B, 5 miles? Was it C, 25 miles? Or was it D, 3 miles? How far away was he when he lit these lights without wires?
All of them are more than I supposed. I don't remember the fact. So I would have gone with the smallest, but since they are all so far, it was 25, 5, 3, and...
25, 5, 15, and 3.
3.
You're going with 3. I'm afraid that's not correct. It's not 3. Joel, do you want to steal this one?
I'll take a stab in the dark. 5.
Nope. It's not that one either, Rob. You've got a chance to recuperate on this one. 15 or 25.
25.
Yep, as legend would have it, 25 miles was the distance that he managed to light bulbs from, which eventually led to the funders pulling a lot of their actual money from him when they suddenly realized that, oh, wait a minute, he can, oh god, okay, maybe we don't fund this dude because he's going to kind of put us out of business. On the subject of his electricity and his prowess within it, Joel, the 1893 Chicago World Fair. Notable event, very memorable. Tesla's AC system was used to power the entire exhibition. But which US president pushed the button to turn on the electricity? Was it A, James Garfield? Was it B, Grover Cleveland? Was it C, Benjamin Harrison? Or was it D, William McKinley? Admittedly, this is more a question of how well you know US presidents rather than Tesla, but...
Sure. What was that second one? That sounded
Grover
familiar.
Cleveland was the second one.
That's the only name that I think that I'm semi-confident has been a president at some point in time. So I'm going to go with that one.
Your stabs in the dark are fantastic. That is correct. So that's 3 for Joel, 2 for Rob at this moment. Extra saying, I'm having so much trouble buffering. I hope there'll be a video archive. There will indeed, Extra. I'm actually recording this locally at the same time as we are streaming it. So after it is done, I will send it off to one of the wonderful Wired video gentlemen who will go and take it and dress it all up and put it all on the internet for you all to take and use as you see fit. So have no fear. I do apologize for the slight buffering hiccups that are occurring. Okay, back to Rob. Which of the following was not patented by Tesla? Which of these were not one of his patents?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Okay, there's quite a few. I feel these are a little bit easy. 1, or A even, automobile speedometer. B, polyphase AC motors. C, radar. Or D, the telephone.
Not
patented.
Should be telephone.
That's correct. The one that he did not patent, he did do polyphase AC motors, the speedometer, and radar, but he was not patented for the telephone. Okay. Oh, God damn, I should have really I might actually switch these around. Actually... Yeah, okay, let's switch these around. I'm switching it around. So I know Joel's already answered a couple of these. Joel, Tesla at the time apparently created the world's largest man-made lightning bolt. How large was this lightning bolt, Joel? Was it A, 100 feet, B, 80 feet, C, 130 feet, or D, 200 feet? How big was this man-made lightning bolt? So his own little coils. Made a huge, huge lightning bolt.
100 feet. Let's go with that.
That is incorrect. Rob, you've got an opportunity to steal this. 80 feet, 130 or 200.
80.
Incorrect. Joel, kick back to you. 130 or 200.
200. So big.
Incorrect. Unfortunately, Rob gets a bonus point from Joel's here with 130 feet. But that's no guarantee that you're going to get this next one, Rob.
No, for sure. After these questions, I'm pretty sure I don't know.
Later in life, Tesla became a bit of a hermit, but he retained a fondness for which particular animal that was quite common in New York. Was it A, cats? Was it B, dogs? Was it C, pigeons? Or was it D, rats?
Pigeons.
It was pigeons. Now, I believe this puts Rob in a position where he can't actually lose because he's 2 points ahead. We've got one question remaining. But we're going to play for pride here, Joel. We're going to play for pride, okay?
This one was too easy, and Joel knew it for sure. So
yeah, 100%. This one's for pride. Joel knows this one as well, I'm sure. Tesla's final project in life was a weapon that he believed could end war as we know it. Yes, he decided that making a giant weapon would lead to everyone going, "Oh god, no, let's not fight anymore, we're all gonna die." But what was the name of this weapon? Was it A, the death ray? Was it B, O2 current extractor? Was it C, the blood boiler? Or was it D, the bone crusher? All kind of ridiculous sounding when you think about it. Which of those was his weapon to end all weapons?
That was the death ray.
It was indeed the death ray, which thankfully never came to pass. Like many of his creations, but would have been quite interesting to see what a post-death ray world would have looked like. Probably very different to this one, but well done to the pair of you. Both absolutely amazing fonts of knowledge. They thought the same about the atomic bomb. Duke, you know what? First of all, welcome. Great to see you. Second of all, yeah, mutually assured destruction. It works until it doesn't, right? It's one of those things. If we all have one, nobody will use it. And
on that topic of inventions that are meant to end war, Nobel, the inventor of TNT, said that with this invention, I have made warfare so terrible, so efficient, that war will cease to be a thing. Instead, war just became very, very efficient at killing people.
So weird that, isn't it? As soon as you put more efficient tools of destruction in people's hands, all of a sudden people get way more efficient at destroying people. Oh, valid point well made. Valid point well made. But let's pivot away for a moment from the somewhat somber tone that we touched on there, though there's no easy way to discuss items of that nature. And let's go back on to a couple of questions from the chat that came in over the break right there. Abby's saying that they are expecting Rose to change a lot once the game rolls on, at the end being a lot more confident, showing some kind of growth. Obviously, there's something to be said for the whole hero's journey method of storytelling. It's kind of tale as old as time, replicated in every kind of media format as you go. The uncertain novice, and then getting learned, and then by the end becoming competent. It's quite interesting in a game that doesn't have, let's say, a gameplay feedback that shows that. There's no experience system. It's not like you're learning skills that show growth. It's not like you're discovering new abilities and weapons to show proficiency in them. How much of a focus, how difficult was it to kind of show that level of a character growth over the course of a game, when really the implementation that you have really is their vocals and their decisions as far as the story making goes? That's... obviously we don't want to talk too spoilerific on a lot of it, but, by the end of the game, Rose is very much taking on a lot of responsibility and very much taking on a lot of decisions and kind of making things her own business, which, at the beginning of the game is something that she very much was not. She was still kind of figuring it all out. How difficult did you find it to show that?
Well, thankfully, a lot of that heavy lifting was done by our voice actors. We were incredibly lucky to find the voice actors that we did for these roles, and their performances really helped the words on the page actually resonate. In some cases, they elevated the writing beyond what was on the page. So a lot of that, especially when it comes to Rose's journey, the way that she eventually starts to embrace the situation and reacts to it, not through fear or anxiety, but through dry humor and just acceptance over, this is what the situation is, and I'm moving forward despite of it, because I have a greater goal in mind. I have something more important that I need to accomplish. And a lot of that is carried in the voice acting performances that we got. So that just made our work so much easier on so many levels.
And you can kind of see in that particular performance alone, part of it is story beats and kind of the positioning of it, but a lot of it is in, as you mentioned, her acting. One of the earlier phases of the game when you're exposed to something quite horrific, Rose has a very strong and adverse reaction to it and almost kind of withdraws into herself, and the entire environment and situation that she's in becomes secondary because it is such a very visceral and shocking situation she's presented with. Watching her go from that to being able to kind of not so much not bat an eyelid. I mean, even over the course of the rest of the game, whenever she's still confronted with these type of things, she's got the kind of breathing. She's got the breathing mantra that she had, where she breathes in, counts it out, goes out. She kind of still has these little coping mechanisms that she carries with her in order to allow it to, process better. But it is quite fascinating watching her go through that level of growth of, okay, I'm way in over my head, to no, I'm determined to go through and find my sister, to the eventual responsibility that she takes it upon herself for basically cleaning up the mess of an entire enlightened society, like it's a lot of weight for someone that basically may or may not have received a letter from a family member a few days ago. And the growth along that is super, super on top of that.
And again, these are journeys of a character that we would like to have more breathing room for. So much dialogue on the cutting room floor. But the stuff that made its way in there is crucial and essential. So
maybe we need to get a director's cut put together at some point. Maybe we need to get like a James Cameron director's edition where we see all the dialogue left intact, devoid of context.
Sure.
I mean, that would be
fun.
the Sunday movie.
Directed by Hideo Kojima. I'm 100% down for that. I'm way okay with that. Way okay with that. It looks like in the chat that a few people have been kind of working their way around the buffering issue that we've encountered towards the end of this. Thank you all very much for your patience on that. I do understand it must be somewhat frustrating to have spent the past 3 hours hanging with us and now having to jump around between mobile and apps and browsers. Do appreciate your time being in here. What we're going to do now, because we are looking at getting close to wrap up time, I'm going to quickly jump on and have a look through the tweets that we received and the messages and the DMs that we received with all of these ideas. And we will have a look and see exactly what it is that people are suggesting, and we'll give away the ones that we like codes to go and play the game this afternoon. So that'll be dope. If you sent it over Twitter, then I will be able to contact you directly. Obviously, if you sent it through Steam, please make a note on the forum and I will get in touch with you on there and get a code out to you. But while I am doing that and reading through, I will implore you all to get any remaining questions that you have out on the floor, because I would hate to leave you all completely and utterly blue-balled in that nature. For my idea there, I hope it's not that boring. You know what? There is no such thing as boring when it comes to inventions, Duke. I'm just going to put it out there. No such thing as boring. Just as a heads up, we will be running, on top of all of this, there are a few more promotions outside of Steam that are going to be running over the next couple of weeks over on the Wired Twitch channel. we will be doing a playthrough of the game and just kind of talking more about our hand in it and kind of exploring it a little bit more. For those who might want to see, that'll be up in the next week or so. And then I believe after the fact, we're going to be maybe pulling you two back in and maybe doing a post-launch recap and kind of answering any more questions that folks have put to us since then. Just, give it a little bit of breathing room and then get another video up with any questions that we didn't get covered in this manner. We will more than likely, I'm kind of in love with this idea of getting people to run inventions past me, so if people don't walk away with a key today, I'm probably just going to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to extend this competition out till next week as well, and then just, carry on giving them out, because what can I say? I'm a soft boy at heart, and I like community engagement when it comes to competitions. We did one a little while ago to get people to design a rocket, and it was super fun. Like watching people get their kids building up Lego rockets and people animating. It was super fun, and that stuff is totally my bag. But let's have a look at the thing. Open the tree. Alright, so we got Juke up in here saying a teleportation device where all organic matter would be converted in electric waves and transported from one device to another via electrical cables. Okay, so we're looking at the kind of Star Trek teleporter, but a literal direct connection kind of thing, I guess.
All right. That makes me think of the Prestige, where he's...
Yeah, someone, I think Extra mentioned that in the chat earlier. I think we were having one of our buffering moments, so I didn't put any attention on it. But the Prestige, yeah. Yeah, what a film.
David Bowie as Nikola Tesla.
What a great film. What a great film. Really, seriously, I absolutely love it. And I just love David Bowie in films in general, actually. I'm a huge Twin Peaks fan. I love Twin Peaks for all of its weirdness and its flaws. So the Fire Walk with Me, where David Bowie basically became the investigating agent for that, was as weird as it was. I absolutely adored it. So got a lot of time for the Prestige. Awful lot of time. Okay, I like that one. We've got Abby saying, a true antimatter than light, yet strong... A true antimatter that is lighter, yet as strong as vibranium, and able to absorb energy. So basically like an energy-absorbing kind of like Okay. A literal antimatter that just absorbs everything. That could have a lot of use. I could think of... I mean, the military would adore that. That would be pretty impressive. I guess the question would be, where would that... I mean, let's look at the laws of thermodynamics here. Energy can't be created or destroyed or anything, right? Like, it's gotta go somewhere. Yeah, like, it just has to. So if it's being absorbed, it's gotta be then placed somewhere. It can't just vanish. So, I mean, I guess there's usage for, like, locomotion in that, maybe, like as propellants, as kind of fuel sources. Okay. I'm fond of that. Obviously, we had Extro's example earlier of the I'm going to say the fantastic being able to just think of something and have it beam into someone's head and not having to make anything on social media. I am so in love with that idea. Do you have a GoFundMe, Extropist? Do you have a do you have a Patreon that I can subscribe to go make that happen? Because it would make everything so much more awesome. We've got Laurent 152487111, the most superior in the line of Lawrence. A tech used to visualize what a person thinks. For example, this could be useful to solve crime cases. If you have a suspect, you can see how he did, what he did, and how, or to understand people with a very different mindset, or to help people suffering from depression. So it's not so much a I'm able to read your mind and replicate things. It's more a... Okay, you know what? I like this one because it's given a couple of different implementations as to how it could be used that aren't just the immediate go-to.
And just to throw that out there, I believe that there are a few articles where Nikola Tesla was talking about mind-reading device or invention that he was working on that would be able to illustrate what people are thinking.
Wow.
I forget exactly where we have those news clips, but in some of those really old newspapers, that were published back in the day. Interviews with Nikola Tesla pop up every once in a while, and I believe that I've read something to that effect. So
wow, that is bananas. That is bananas. But at the same time, I'm not surprised. Like honestly, you could tell me that Tesla literally like came up with a patent or an idea for, well, he managed to train like chipmunks to like take apples and convert them into a fuel source, and I'd be like, yeah, that sounds like a Tesla thing to do. Like, yeah, totally. I know that seems like a Tesla. I would not be surprised. Duke-san, did I just unintentionally copy the machine from the Prestige? Well, this is awkward. No, honestly, I didn't even make the Prestige connection until Joel brought it up. So you're not alone on this one. It happens all the time. Look at music creation. Like, someone makes a song and everyone says that, that sounds like these 15 other songs that use the same chord structure. No, nothing's original anymore. Everything's already been thought of.
And the same thing happened to us.
Everything has happened. Yeah. That's it. That is it. And I think you might be able to hear a police siren in the background. Good old London. Gotta love it, baby. Gotta love it. Okay. So just as we start to wrap things up, first of all, I want to straight up say thank you very much to both Joel and Rob for hanging out today. It's actually been really, really fun. Obviously, we come out here today to kind of talk about the game and kind of, promote it and kind of talk to people and share a little bit of our own personal involvement around the game. Because we like to think people enjoy seeing that stuff. But it's also actually just been a ton of fun. It's actually been a good old riot. So you've been absolute fantastic co-hosts. And a big thank you both to our lurkers, our jerkers, and our twerkers in the chat, as well as the verbose people. We appreciate you. Thank you. It's been amazing to have you in here. Before we do wrap, I do actually want to take a second and say that there is somewhat of an Edison or an elephant, an Edison in the room with regards to Close to the Sun coming out on Steam, which we are very excited for. Super awesome. But the fact that it has indeed come quite far down the line, a year down the line, from being originally on the Epic Store. Now, obviously, we see all the social comments, we see all the forum comments. It's something that I've been kind of back and forth talking to people with. And it is quite popular, especially nowadays, kind of seeing a lot of folks. You kind of get invested in the platform. You kind of get invested in a ecosystem. You get invested in a community, and it can be understandable when there's a game that's released that you're excited about, and you kind of see it launching on other platforms way in advance. Some people are a little worse at it than others. With Close to the Sun, I think there was never really any real. It was never stated that it was going anywhere else other than Epic when it was announced, right? Like, it came out for Epic, and then we said we'll do everything else a little bit later, because it was important both as publishers and developers that we didn't go, hey, it's coming out, get it on Steam, but, like, not yet, bye. No, it was important that we didn't kind of pull a bait and switch in that manner. And we can understand that it has been super frustrating for some people, and there are, and we know this. Let's be honest, not just from publisher and developer to a gaming community here. Let's be gamers to gamers and who understand how the internet works. There are some people that are never really going to quite be behind accepting any real explanation about that, and we understand that. We 100% understand that, top to bottom. Like, that's entirely your decision, and we 100% validate, you do you, we get it. We 100% do. When Close to the Sun was in its infancy, Unreal were basically massive long-time partners, both from Wired and for yourselves. A lot of our other games, Grip, and to even mention one that came out on Steam on Unreal, we worked very, very close and very, very hard with Unreal in an awful lot of situations. With regards to yourselves, they were huge partners and literally funded the title quite early on in its development. It's not even an Epic thing at a certain point. The game, and to an extent the studio and this entire project, wouldn't have existed without Unreal basically being there to be invested with their technology and the funding. They helped with the plan to basically make sure the studio continued to be able to work on the title and get everything sorted and future games. And it's basically, you know, at no point was it ever put forward in a position of, we want to go and take a ton of money because Epic's offering a money hat. That's a term that gets thrown around a lot. You kind of see it quite a bit. With regards to it, it quite literally was the stars lining up. You know, at the time that Close to the Sun was kind of coming to the end of its development, Epic Store was becoming a thing. We were working very closely with them in its process, in its development, with everything around it. And, you know, with that idea of, we're just putting this store out, we'd really love to have you on board on this. And obviously there's contracts that come with that, and obviously there's reasons to do that. You know, the benefit of being one of the early titles on a new storefront as far as visibility goes, especially to an indie studio, it can't be underspoken. It very much can't. But at no point would we ever say that it was done with the malicious intent of, you know, preferring one studio or one platform over another. You know, the games industry is a wild and fluid and crazy business. Meetings and deals happen left, right, and center all over the place. And, you know, in this instance, whilst no doubt there are studios that may or may not have kind of looked at the dollar signs and gone, hey, it's amazing, we're going to go make a video game here and take a big bung for it. This particular instance, it very much wasn't the case. You know, the stars just lined up when a store opened. We were partnered with them in the development of the game, and it just made the most logical sense to do so. You know, and even now, you know, we look at the state of the situation, and, you know, we're releasing a game on Steam a year after the fact, and Epic also made a decision to give it away for free a few weeks ago, for many people, which is, you know, we totally understand it can be a hard sell. But, as I said at the very beginning there, at no point was it ever really designed or lined up as a middle finger to consumers. It wasn't meant as an anti-gamer measure. It was just the way that this particular project lined up, and some people might not ever really get on board with that explanation, but that's totally fine. That's 100%. Variety is the spice of life, and if some people do check this out and they see it and decide to pick it up at a discount, then power to you. It's a pleasure to have you on the Helios. Which is an awkward topic to cover. I totally understand. It's a little weird being that transparent. I know a lot of people will be like, wow, they're talking about that, and there's really no easy way to go about it. You know, we see it, we see the comments, both as publisher and developer, and, you know, taking all of those layers away, speaking as just, you know, game community members to game community members, that's exactly how it shook out, and that's where we are now. You know, it's a big game for the Storm guys here. It's a big game for us. It's one that's really important to us. It's one that we really, really believe in. It's one that we really, really appreciate. And we are super excited that it's on Steam. You know, every storefront has its perks. Every storefront has its drawbacks. Steam now is nothing like the way Steam used to be many, many moons ago. I mean, you know, I still remember picking up Half-Life 2 and taking it home and realizing I needed an internet connection, but I was a college kid that didn't have one, and losing my mind about trying to get my way around the kind of clunky nature of it. And, you know, between the state that Epic Store is in, there's a lot of things it could do better. It's a lot of things that it does all right. But, you know, at no point would we ever say that we believe that we're kind of shoveling the game out on Steam right now as okay, now that everyone else has had a piece, you guys can have the remains, because that's not the case at all. We're super excited that we're releasing it, super excited to have it on here, and, you know, we really do hope that everyone does enjoy their time with the game in whichever form they do end up playing it, be it free somewhere else or be it on Steam as of today. So, apologies for the big pedestal there. I know it's a little bit of a weird one. Believe me, that was as awkward for me to read out, and I hope that I didn't upset anybody as it was for you all to hear. But I thought it was important to bring to fruition for you all. So not to spend the end of the stream on too sour a discussion or a note, because that is a very weird, flat mood to take the stream down in. Let's have a little bit of a look. Honestly, I'm adoring these choices in the thing. I know I said we're going to do the top 3, but honestly, Abby, Duke, Laurent, I will hit you guys and girls up on Twitter and get you a Steam key for the game after the show, because I have that ability to do so. I have the power. Extro, you are on Steam. I know that you are 100% not on Twitter. Please drop me a line on Wired Gary. You'll probably see me replying in the Steam forums. Drop me a line on there. I'll get a code out to you as well. You've all given fantastic suggestions. I appreciate you all from the bottom of my heart. And just before we wrap up, is there anything you two fine gentlemen, Joel, Rob, is there anything you'd like to share? Anything you would like to say?
Well, I'm happy to be here, and it was a really nice conversation. I'm glad that so many people were watching us, and I really hope that they will enjoy Close to the Sun, because it's something that it's important for Storm in a Teacup. It's been a long journey creating it, and it's been an amazing journey watching people play. Also, when we were just launching it and we were in Boston for the PAX or at Gamescom. So having a connection with the players is something that we really enjoy, and we really look forward to have their feedback, because they are very useful for us to grow as a studio and to make better games, of course. Thank you very much, everybody.
Let me just
go ahead. Go ahead, Joel. Yeah, go.
The amount of lessons that we've gotten from Close to the Sun is amazing. It's by far the most polished game that we've done so far, and it is by no means perfect, but it's solid, it's good, and it's one of those projects that we can just build upon henceforth. So we're really excited to have it available on each and every platform now. It's been a lot of work to get it all done, but we're really happy to finally have Close to the Sun everywhere where we want it to be. So
awesome. Thank you very much, the both of you, for your time. I've had just the absolute best time. Abby, Extro, Duke, and everyone else that has ran through the chat. Thank you utterly, top to bottom. Being able to sit down and talk video games and share things that I'm passionate about is one of the absolute best parts of this job. Makes all of the late nights and the endless messages most definitely worth it. So thank you top to bottom for all of your time, your attention. Echoing Rob and Joel right here, please, again, we've noted a lot of feedback in the forums, especially over the course of pre-launch. Please keep that feedback coming. A lot of the time there are reasons, sometimes development reasons, sometimes contract reasons. There are many reasons why things might be the way they are, but sometimes it is an oversight. Sometimes it is something that can be fixed. Sometimes it's something that we haven't even thought of. We are not infallible. We are all human. We're not all Tesla. Thankfully, God knows what that society would look like. So please keep all of your feedback coming in the forums. I do jump in there from time to time, and if I do take a moment to reply to you, please make your feedback count, because it all gets back to these folks and it all adds up. So we are going to wrap the stream up now. Extra, Abby, Duke, and of course everyone else that sent their... I've closed my Twitter window now and I forget the other... Laurent. God, my memory's going. I really need that brandy. Thank you very much for your submissions. I'll be in touch with you and get keys out to you as soon as humanly possible. I hope you have the most amazing rest of your week. It is only Tuesday. There are 4 more days. 3 more days. The days are all rolling into one. 3 more days left this week for you all to kick ass and take names. Whatever you choose to do in that time, please enjoy yourselves. Get on out there, live your best lives, and keep making me proud. Whilst this is a little odd, I would normally, at this point, if we were on our Twitch channel, I'd go, hey, Everyone, we're going to go and check out somebody playing the game. Add the Steam badges. It's on the list. It's on the list of questions that I'll take back to the guys after the show. Believe me, I've got a big old notepad here with all of the things that you folks have asked about on, and I'll get responses for all of it to you in a timely manner, I do promise. Normally, if you were on our Twitch channel, I would go, hey, guys, girls, let's go check out somebody playing the game and go, see what we've been discussing for the past few hours in action. It would be something we would normally do. Unfortunately, we're not on Twitch right now. We're on Steam, which is weird. First time streaming on Steam, by the way, for me. This is a weird one. I'm a little bit out of my element, but it's been a pleasure to have you. We do actually have a wonderful, if any of you do have a Twitch account, we have this wonderful streamer friend of ours, wonderful partnered streamer known as Commander Ivy. Big old, wonderful heart on her. She is fantastic. She's charismatic. She's got a wonderful community. She's actually running through a playthrough of Close to the Sun right now. We've actually given her a few copies of the game and the collector's edition to give away to folks over the course of the stream. So I'm going to link her channel in the chat for you right now and say, if you've enjoyed any of our discussion here today and you've got a Twitch account and you want to go and see some of the game in action before you decide whether you want to pick it up or not or whatever, go check out Ivy, go give her a look, go see some of the game in action, go ask some of her opinion on the matter. Don't believe us. We're 100%. We're a little bit, we're a little bit biased, but no, please go check her out. Go and enjoy her time. Go and check out the stream if you have the ability to do so, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of that show. We're going to finish off with the launch trailer that we put out today to celebrate the stream launch. This has been Gary over at Wild Productions. You two want to sign yourselves off? One at a time? Come on, show business, baby. You gotta sign off. You gotta do it. Show business. Come on.
No, well, thanks again, and we really hope that you enjoyed both the streaming and that you are gonna enjoy the game. So.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Awesome. Have an amazing rest of your week, ladies and gentlemen. We'll sign off once more with the trailer. And from us, this is it. Catch you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Rated M for mature.
You've always tried to protect me, my big sister, but this was meant to be. It's now my turn to protect you, if only so that things unfold the way they are meant to. We discovered quantum resonance anomalies that prove the one-electron theory.
These things are merely antibodies, cleaning up the mess, which is us.
My research is about exploiting loopholes in the flow of time, but the research means so much more. It could do so much more for all of us.
I'm opening all the doors I can for you. Go and say hi to your sister.
Aubrey, help!
When playing Close to the Sun for the very first time, one of the most dramatic things you'll encounter early on is a ship, but not just any ship. The Helios is bigger than any ocean liner ever built and is an immediate visual representation of Tesla's power and influence in our alternate take on history. Completed in 1890, just 15 years after the Statue of Liberty and 21 years before the ill-fated Titanic, the Helios is not only a prominent display of power, but also of Tesla's extravagance and narcissism. It's covered in gold and exuberant Art Deco charm. Even the name the Helios is from the ancient Greek word for the sun, and reveals Tesla's view of himself as the Prometheus of his era. When designing the Helios, we were really aiming for a conflicting sense of both grandeur and isolation. Exploring such an enormous ship could seem like a marvelous adventure, but what would happen if something went wrong? Then a ship even the most secure and wondrous in the world would become a trap, stranded from civilization with no rescue or easy escape. Tesla had an incredible mind with all the outlandish ideas that go with it, from X-ray tech to earthquake machines. He was a firm believer in science through practical experimentation, but their requirements soon began posing real dangers to the public. Thus, the need for both safety and secrecy, the Helios became a new home for Tesla and other like-minded souls. Cruising through international waters, the ship became a free haven of scientific research, free from state control and Edison spies. Or so Tesla had hoped.
You can't run from my road.
Playing with fire, now it's all set ablaze. Oh, what have we done? Is that what we get for playing too close to the sun?
When playing Close to the Sun for the very first time, one of the most dramatic things you'll encounter early on is a ship, but not just any ship. The Helios is bigger than any ocean liner ever built and is an immediate visual representation of Tesla's power and influence in our alternate take on history. Completed in 1890, just 15 years after the Statue of Liberty and 21 years before the ill-fated Titanic, the Helios is not only a prominent display of power, but also of Tesla's extravagance and narcissism. It's covered in gold and exuberant Art Deco charm. Even the name the Helios is from the ancient Greek word for the sun, and reveals Tesla's view of himself as the Prometheus of his era. When designing the Helios, we were really aiming for a conflicting sense of both grandeur and isolation. Exploring such an enormous ship could seem like a marvelous adventure, but what would happen if something went wrong? Then a ship, even the most secure and wondrous in the world, would become a trap, stranded from civilization with no rescue or easy escape. Tesla had an incredible mind with all the outlandish ideas that go with it, from X-ray tech to earthquake machines. He was a firm believer in science through practical experimentation, but their requirements soon began posing real dangers to the public. Thus, the need for both safety and secrecy, the Helios became a new home for Tesla and other like-minded souls. Cruising through international waters, the ship became a free haven of scientific research, free from state control and Edison spies. Or so Tesla had hoped.
You can't run from my road.
Of the human race.
Promise me, Rose!
I am terribly sorry.
I hate redemption! I hate respect!
Shall we?
No! Not like this!
Who goes there? Stop!
Away from prying eyes. All that matters is progress.
My name is Emily Moment, and I am a voiceover actor.
Rose? This is Nikola Tesla speaking, and unless it wasn't already obvious, this ship is under strict quarantine. There is to be no movement on or off the Helios.
Rose is smart and enterprising, and she is sassy. And I like all of those qualities. I quite like that this is obviously a strong female-driven script that is something, that's really drawn me to it. The fact that it's, really two strong female roles in it has been great, but particularly that she is not a side character. She's been written as someone who is in charge, in control, who gets the job done, and has a sense of humor, which I quite like. This is my first video game, and I love it. It is so much fun. It's different, obviously, than working with someone else in a scene, where it's purely based on listening, right? You have to be a fantastic listener in order to be a good actor with a partner. And this is a completely solo job, but you have so much freedom. Because you don't have to base your responses off of what someone else says, you get to create what the character is feeling and thinking, and you might even have the ability to say something and maybe kind of inspire the way that it's going to be designed around it, which is really exciting, so I love it.
Listen, buddy, like I said before, we will do
Rose?
what we can.
Who are you talking to?
Ada! Oh, thank God. Yeah, some guy named Aubrey was broadcasting on our frequency. Said he was stuck in the engine halls and mentioned something about exotic energy. I'd like some answers.
Rose, I'd rather explain it in person. It's
No,
not
Ada,
what
now is a great time to tell me what the hell is going on here.
Fine. I'll be brief. Listen.
It can be hard to work emotion into the text, particularly when you're just being dropped in to a scene and you're bouncing around. We don't always do things in sequence of when they're actually happening. And if you don't actually get to see it in front of you, or you don't have the other actor in the room with you, that can be quite hard. But if the writing is there, if it's well written, then it's actually quite easy to do. And I think some of the more emotional scenes, particularly in this game, I didn't find as challenging as I maybe thought I would, because it just kind of came because it was well written.
I need to get across somehow. Maybe if I can get that generator back on. I need to get across somehow. Maybe if I can get that generator back on. Okay, now to get up and across that thing. Okay, now to get up and across that thing.
She's a full-blown character with emotions and angers and opinions, and so certainly, yeah, it makes it worth, and I think hopefully it would make it worth someone wanting to play the character as well. That's what will keep people actually wanting to play the game, because there's someone interesting who's at the core of it. But also that there is this really intense relationship between Rose and Ada, her sister, and I have a sister who I'm very close with, so it was very easy for me to kind of tap into that relationship between the two of them, and also the sparring between the two of them. It's very realistic, that there's a push and a pull and a kind of roll of the eyes, you know, relationship between the two of them, but that ultimately, obviously, they would die and kill for each other.
Discovered quantum resonance anomalies that prove the one-electron theory.
These things are merely antibodies, cleaning up the mess, which is us.
We've tried to contain it all, but the point is we need to leave. My research is about exploiting loopholes in the flow of time, but the research means so much more. It could do so much more for all of us.